Chapter 157. There was still one more day before the monolith would collapse. As the countdown gradually approached, the situation in the Tokyo area became more and more chaotic. Now, the price of a plane ticket to other areas had already been raised to a sky-high price. In order to be able to gather enough money to buy a plane ticket to other areas, the residents of the Tokyo area had already gone completely crazy. Stealing and robbing had become the most common daily activities in the Tokyo area. If someone walked into the downtown area of the Tokyo area, then they would have discovered it. The supermarkets, shops, shopping centers, production factories, and other places had already been robbed clean. All of the goods had disappeared, leaving behind only broken glass and some bloodstains that silently accused violence. In addition, some of the rich people's houses had also been broken into by a group of crazy residents like bandits, leaving behind broken doors that swayed back and forth in the cold wind, making gg sounds. The entire Tokyo area had already become a hellish place. Even when the situation was so chaotic, some controversial topics were still circulating. Among them, the matter of fairy tale occupied at least 80% of the range. Through the live broadcast, the declaration that Noah made in front of everyone that day had already become a big event that no one did not know about. Regarding the matter of that day, many people also had their own opinions. The people who still retained their sense of reason hated those fellows who were also human beings. They felt that they were discrediting the entire human race, and directly caused the entire Tokyo area to lose a huge force to protect it. They cursed and scolded them endlessly. The people who had lost their sense of reason seemed to have begun to feel afraid of the consequences of their actions, but they did not have the slightest bit of self-reflection or regret, falling into a complete daze. And the people who witnessed everything that day, and the culprits who caused all of this, on one hand, were secretly afraid, on the other hand, they pretended to be calm, indignantly expressing that even if there was no police, the Tokyo area still had the self-defense forces. With the protection of the self-defense forces, even if there was no police, it would not matter. This was the thought of most of the people who were present that day. But it was also pardonable. After all, although the self-defense forces did not have an initiator, partner, and lacked a strong individual strength, they still had a lot of influence. In the past, there had been 2 large-scale wars with protozoa in the Tokyo area. The first time was in 2021, which was when protozoa first appeared in the human world. That war divided the country into 5 regions. In order to expand the defense line, the self-defense forces fought against the primitive animals in the Tokyo area. After many people sacrificed their lives, they barely stopped the attack of the primitive animals and successfully evacuated the survivors to the current Tokyo area. That war was known as the First Great Battle of Guangdong. The second occurred several years after the Great War that followed the appearance of the protozoa. At that time, the protogut animals gathered again and attacked the Tokyo area. However, this time, through research, humans had understood that the magnetic field emitted by the clam could weaken the vitality of protogut animals. Thus, with the monolith as the boundary, the self-defense forces successfully repelled the protozoa using weaponry made from aluminum. That war was known as the Second Great Battle of Guangdong. This time, because of Aldebaran, the Tokyo area once again faced a crisis. The upcoming war between the Tokyo area and the assembled protozoa became the Third Great Battle of Guangdong. With the experience of successfully repelling the protozoa in the Second Great Battle of Guangdong, many people hoped that this time, the self-defense forces could also repel the protozoa and protect the entire Tokyo area. Therefore, almost all residents of the Tokyo area used this reasonable excuse to convince themselves that what they did that day was not wrong. However, Noah's declaration that day still aroused many people's suspicion. He gave up the opportunity to enter the underground bunker to save his life and gave up protecting the Tokyo area, which was equivalent to a community of life. Was Fairy Tale really not afraid of death? In this regard, many people also had their own opinions. Some people thought that Noah was extremely stupid and hypocritical. He was so strong in front of everyone, but when the Tokyo area was really finished, he would reveal his true colors and could only join the ranks of the escapees with his tail between his legs. Some people thought that Noah was also skeptical about whether the police could stop the attack of the protozoa, so he planned to stand by and leave the mess to the self-defense forces. He would not participate in it himself. If he saw that the situation was not good, he would definitely have other plans. However, some people who thought that they were smart felt that since Noah made such a declaration in front of so many people, unless he really did not want to live, this declaration was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Therefore, one day, such a news report appeared in newspapers and on the internet. Quitting does not mean that you do not want to live. Fairy tale, is there a way for me to survive? As soon as this report came out, it immediately caused an uproar and gained the approval of almost everyone. In this way, there was also an explanation for why Noah made such a declaration so confidently. Because of this, a series of questions were also triggered. President Xiaoshi carried a whole pile of papers and walked to Noah's desk with some effort. He threw them on it and said in a rare embarrassed manner, "This was just sent in." Hearing this, Noah, who was sitting at the desk, sighed heavily. Are they here to apply to join Fairy Tale again? Yes. Xiaoshi nodded helplessly. These people seem to believe that we have a way to save their lives. All of them have come to seek refuge with Fairy Tale, hoping to be protected by Fairy Tale. Then just like before, find someone to seriously review them. Noah waved his hand impatiently. It's still the same 3 requirements. Those who don't hate the cursed child, those who can accept the cursed child, and those who have good moral character, let them join. The rest of you, chase them out. Got it. Xiaoshi nodded, picked up the tall pile of papers, and walked out with difficulty. As for Hina, she had already come here 10 minutes ago with a pile of applications like Xiaoshi. At this time, the door was opened again. Same as before. Noah said without looking up. Just find someone to review them. However, this time, Noah did not wait for a crisp answer, but a silence. Noah, who was puzzled, looked up and saw a man and a woman. It was Rentaro and Mugino. Why are you here? Noah looked at Mugino with some surprise. Is your body okay? The most basic movement is no longer an obstacle. Mugino answered honestly. But if you want to fight, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. Then it's not a problem. Noah shrugged. Anyway, it's best to see you healthy. Mugino smiled. On the side, Rentaro, who had been silent all this time, looked up at Noah and whispered. Have you really made up your mind? The words came out of nowhere, but Noah smiled indifferently. I knew you would come to me. You knew? Rentaro was slightly taken aback. That's right. Noah met Rentaro's gaze. After all, I've said before that you're the kind of person who would sacrifice yourself without hesitation if you can carry out a righteous cause. Even the people around you would hesitate to sacrifice themselves. So, I've long guessed that you would come here to question me for the lives of those people. Rentaro was speechless. Basically, Noah had guessed Rentaro's purpose for coming here. Rentaro came here to question Noah why he didn't use Fairy Tale to protect Tokyo, and why he gave up the opportunity to enter the underground bunker. Chapter 158. Noah once said in front of Rentaro that Rentaro was the kind of person who would sacrifice himself for the greater good. At that time, Rentaro even refuted him, saying that he wasn't the kind of person who would die early. Unfortunately, Ryutaru's questioning had exposed the essence of righteousness hidden deep within him. I just don't understand why you're doing this. Rentaro clicked his tongue, as if he was a dead duck who refused to admit his mistake. It's not for the greater good. Is that so? Noah looked deeply at Rentaro. Do you really not understand why I'm doing this? Rentaro opened his mouth, but he was at a loss for words for the second time. It would be a lie to say that he didn't understand why Noah was doing this. After all, even an idiot would know that Noah was representing the fairy tale to make such a declaration. It was to protect the cursed children living in the fairy tale. People could not tolerate the cursed children, and they even wanted all of them to die. Noah, on the other hand, wanted to protect these children so that they could live happily. Therefore, Noah made such a sound on behalf of these children who were used to being bullied. It was just like what Noah said before. Standpoint. Because of the difference in standpoint. Therefore, Noah had to stand on the opposite side of the entire Tokyo area. Even if that's the case, there's no need to use such an extreme method, right? Rintaro couldn't let it go. Are you really going to watch the entire Tokyo area die in the hands of the protogut animals? Why not? Noah said indifferently. Since they can casually say that they want us to die, why can't we just watch them die? You're too extreme. Rintaro said loudly. Just because they don't treat you well, you're going to watch them die? That's why I said, Rintaro, I'm not like you. Noah was still as calm as ever. If someone hurts the people around me, then I definitely won't be able to persuade myself to let them go for the sake of the so-called righteous cause. Fairy Tale will always exist for the sake of her family and companions. I should have told you that before. Rintaro's expression was conflicted. He still couldn't let it go. Mugging, who had personally witnessed the conversation between the two, could only sigh inwardly. From Mugento's point of view as a bystander, both Noya and Rintaro's statements were correct. The difference was that Noah's point of view was from the perspective of his family and companions, while Rintaro's point of view was from the perspective of the entire Tokyo region and even all of humanity. One was for the sake of justice. Another was for the greater good. Who could say that Noah and Rintaro were wrong? Rintaro seemed to understand this as well. He also understood that he couldn't force others to work hard to protect others. That sounded very noble, but unfortunately, how many people could do that? Even Rintaro couldn't be sure that he didn't have a selfish side. Moreover, Noah wasn't being selfish. He wasn't just trying to protect himself. He was simply giving Rintaro a taste of his own medicine. If others treated him well, he would treat them well. If others didn't treat him well, he would return the favor 100-fold. The president of the fairy tale was Noah Doria. This was the most basic principle of how he conducted himself in this world. Rintaro, who could understand this, sighed dispiritedly. But you're also causing a huge impact, aren't you? Noah's declaration not only made the fairy tale stand on the opposite side of the entire Tokyo area, but it also caused all kinds of problems. Fairy Tale had other means of survival, which led to a large number of people requesting to join Fairy Tale in an attempt to obtain the protection of Fairy Tale was one thing. Noah's actions also caused three major impacts. The first was that some people had already begun to propose the abolition of the new law of primitive animals. The reason was also very simple. It was because Noah had publicly announced that Fairy Tale would no longer contribute to the protection of the Tokyo area. A group of officials in the Tokyo area felt that there was no need to give basic human rights to the cursed child, who did not protect humans. However, this proposal didn't have any effect. The reason was that the cursed children in the fairy tale didn't represent all the cursed children. Moreover, the fairy tale also had people other than the cursed children. According to this argument, if the cursed children in the fairy tale didn't work, then the human rights of all the cursed children would be abolished. If the fairy tale people didn't work, then the human rights of all the human beings would be deprived. Therefore, this proposal was still in a state of controversy. At present, as long as there were no accidents, it would be depressed sooner or later. Second, on that day, Noah brought the fairy tale people and killed a group of people led by Takahito in front of everyone's eyes. Killing people in front of everyone's eyes caused a large number of people to react violently. The people all believed that this kind of organization that would casually kill ordinary people was a complete criminal and terrorist organization. They should all be arrested and brought to justice, or even sentenced to death. Unfortunately, this argument was also controversial. This was because the group of people led by Takahito was a felon who wanted to plant a bomb in the fairy tale. On the other hand, the members of Fairy Tale, led by Noah, were basically all police officers. They had the most basic right to crack down on crimes. Shooting and killing felons was not considered a crime. It could only be said that they were carrying out the right to self-defense and the right to take control of the situation. However, the fairy tale shot the captured criminals on the spot in front of everyone, which made many people feel that this was already in the category of wantonly killing criminals. Therefore, this issue had been debated for a long time. As for the last issue, it was the impact of the actions of the residents of the Tokyo area that day. After Noah announced that he would not participate in the war, the residents of Tokyo who rejected the cursed children for various reasons showed that it didn't matter if there were self-defense forces, even if there were no police. This attitude made many police officers who were eager to protect the Tokyo area feel disappointed. They were all angry and disappointed. They worked so hard to protect the Tokyo area with their lives, but in the end, they were treated like this. Who wouldn't be disappointed? Coupled with the news that the fairy tale had other means to save their lives, many police officers who chose to go to the battlefield because they would die if they did not protect the Tokyo area no longer had any worries. One by one, they chose to join the fairy tale and joined the ranks of those who did not participate in the war. These three effects made the already chaotic Tokyo area even more chaotic. This was what Rentaro was referring to. What's wrong? Noah could not help but laugh in response. You think this is my fault? That's not what I meant. Rentaro stuttered. As mentioned before, Noah's approach was not wrong. Or rather, when people were treated badly, it was impossible for them to repay evil with good. That was human nature. At this moment, Mugging, who inadvertently looked out the window, narrowed his eyes and shouted in shock. How is this possible? Hearing Mugging scream, Noah and Rentaro, who were about to start a new round of debate, were stunned. They followed Mugging's gaze and looked out the window. The next moment, the scene that was imprinted in their eyes made Noah and Rentaro's pupils constrict. A feeling of shock started from the soles of their feet, rushed up their bodies, and spread to the top of their heads. Chapter 159. Below the gloomy clouds, a gigantic monolith that seemed to be able to pierce through the clouds stood there. Unlike the other monolith, this gigantic monolith's pitch-black luster had faded by more than half, and the remaining parts were covered with white spots or stains. Number 32, Monolith. This monolith, which had guarded the Tokyo area for more than 5 years, finally made a sound that made people's hair stand on end. Gag. Undoubtedly, it was very far away from the monolith's location, but everyone in the Tokyo area seemed to have heard this sharp sound, and turned to look in the direction of the monolith. Then, almost everyone saw it. On the towering monolith number 32, which was originally a rectangle, one of its corners suddenly collapsed. Kacha kacha kacha. As if it had caused a chain reaction, the gigantic monolith, from top to bottom, let out a cracking sound, and then, as if it had been pushed down by a huge force, it gradually fell down. Peng 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 peng. Everyone could clearly hear that the monolith seemed to have shattered, and in the midst of the explosive sounds, because it couldn't withstand the corrosion of the corrosive liquid, it turned into pieces, and as it collapsed, it fell in all directions like meteorites. Compared to the monolith itself, the process of the monolith fragments collapsing and falling to the ground seemed to be played in slow motion, one piece after another smashing into the ground. Dong 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 dong. The meteorite-like fragments of the monolith collided with the ground violently, crushing the ground, buildings, trees, equipment, and other objects under them, smashing them into pieces. Rumble. The frequent collisions caused the ground to shake, and the dust from the shattered monolith flew in all directions. The wind from the impact also blew in all directions, spreading out in all directions. Finally, a mushroom-shaped cloud of dust that could cover the entire Tokyo area's sky rose up, like the smoke before a war, and imprinted itself into everyone's eyes. After witnessing the entire process, the residents of the Tokyo area finally reacted. One by one, they let out a blood-curdling scream. Subconsciously, their goal was to get as far away from the collapsed monolith number 32 as they frantically fled. How could this, in fairy tale, Noah and Mugging, who had also witnessed the entire process, were speechless. Only Rentaro, who couldn't accept it, muttered. This is impossible. There should still be a day before the collapse of monolith number 32, right? Could it be that the sage son of heaven made a mistake in his calculations? It's the wind. Noah looked at the sky, and saw the clouds being blown away by the strong wind, and the dust and smoke in the distance, and said in a deep voice. The wind has toppled the monolith. Hearing this, Mugging finally reacted. Riki-kun. Mugging shouted at Rentaro. Quick. The third Kanto war has begun. Noah. Rentaro also reacted, and anxiously looked at Noah. Are you really not going to participate in the war? Noah glanced at Rentaro, and without saying anything, he turned around and silently expressed his intention. Damn it. Rentaro cursed, and directly rushed out of Noah's room, and rushed in the direction of the monolith. In the direction of the monolith, District 40 of the outer area, the auxiliary police force was gathered there, and prepared to fight against the attacking protozoa. However, without Fairy Tail's participation in the battle, as well as the large number of police officers who intended to join Fairy Tail, the number of police auxiliary troops sent to the battle should be much less than what everyone had initially thought, right? Before the auxiliary police force is dispatched, the self-defense forces will fight against the attacking protozoa. If the self-defense forces can win, then everything is going well. If the self-defense forces lose, then without the Fairy Tail, the auxiliary police force will have to fight against the protozoa that defeated the self-defense forces. At that time, the situation will not be optimistic. Are you really not going? Mugging looked into the distance, and said to Noah without looking back. Without the Fairy Tail, the auxiliary police force will not be able to stop the attack of the protozoa. What? Noah also did not look back, as if he was talking to the air, and said to himself. Do you also want me to carry out the so-called righteousness and save a group of people who want us dead? Mugging was silent for a while, and then he smiled bitterly. Although I want to say that, I definitely don't think so in my heart. Hearing this, Noah raised his head in confusion. What do you mean? What do I mean? Mugging lowered his head and murmured. I mean that I envy you, because you still have the chance to protect your family and friends. After that, Mugging also walked out of the room and left the scene. Looking in the direction where Mugging disappeared, Noah closed his eyes. Mugging changed. He became not only immersed in hatred, but also immersed in memories. Thinking about it, the success of the kidney transplant surgery will free Mugging from the abyss and let him enter a new world, right? Fairy Tail, the main building, this was the place where the police officers of Fairy Tail gathered in the past to receive commissions, submit completed tasks, receive rewards, and record their results. The commission board with the commission list was a bulletin board on the side wall that could be seen as soon as he entered the door. Pushing open the door of the main building, Noah walked into the main building. President. At this moment, in the main building, almost all the police of Fairy Tail gathered here. When they saw Noah come in, they immediately greeted Noah. Noah nodded, then walked forward in the middle of the crowd that automatically separated, and came in front of a huge screen. It was a large electronic screen used on weekdays for various emergency notifications and relaying relevant reports in the Tokyo area. At this time, the big screen was broadcasting the live broadcast of the collapse of the monolith on number 32. Originally, there would not be this kind of live broadcast on the battlefield. However, Noah had ordered someone to place a camera and a bug in the sky above monolith number 32, so that the situation there could be broadcasted back. Therefore, Noah could clearly see what was happening there at this time. The shocking dust and debris brought by the collapse of monolith turned into smoke, forming thick clouds that covered the sky of the entire Tokyo area. The Tokyo area self-defense forces position also seemed to have been directly attacked by the monolith's smoke and dust that was blown over by the wind. Under such circumstances, on the big screen, the self-defense force and a group of attacking monsters began to confront each other. Roar! Roar! Woo! The various roars of the protozoa were clearly transmitted throughout the main building through the high-power bugs on the electronic eye. Through the live broadcast on the big screen, Noah saw a huge figure in the middle of a large number of protozoa, under the support of a large number of protozoa, running in the direction of the Tokyo area. Looking at the huge figure, Noah slowly narrowed his eyes. Former Taurus Legion subordinate, Aldebaran. Chapter 160. Unlike the rest of the protozoa, Aldebaran was very eye-catching. Based on its size alone, Aldebaran was dozens of times larger than the rest of the protozoa. It was as huge as a small mountain. Even from a distance, one could hear the tremors of the ground when it ran. As for the full appearance of Aldebaran, it was impossible to express it in words. As a stage 4 protozoan, Aldebaran's body contained at least a few dozen or even a few hundred species factors. The original appearance of these dozens or hundreds of species could more or less be seen on Aldebaran's body. Therefore, if one were to use a phrase to describe it, Aldebaran was a mountain of meat and carapace with an extremely long mouth of a crocodile. Just based on this form alone, Aldebaran was even more breathtaking than a normal stage 4 protogut animal. Roar! 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 Amidst the roars in support of all kinds of protozoa, the huge army of protozoa led by Aldebaran advanced side by side. The raised sand and dust flooded the horizon behind them. Bang! Then, with such a dull sound as the source, the artillery from the self-defense forces camp fired in unison. Self-propelled cannons, tank cannons, autocannons, and all kinds of long-distance artillery shells fired at the same time. They drew a perfect trajectory and killed the army of protozoa. Bang 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 bang. The sound of explosions rang continuously throughout the entire battlefield. From the big screen, a group of police officers led by Noah who stayed in the main building saw the front row of protozoa being blown away. The raging flames were like dragons and snakes, rising high into the sky. However, in the flames, the second row of protozoa led the army of protozoa surged out and continued to charge in the direction of the Tokyo area. Bang 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 bang. In order to meet the attack, in the self-defense forces camp, the sound of artillery fire also rang out, making the entire battlefield lively. The battlefield was fiery red. The sky seemed to be burning as well, a fiery red. In Fairy Tale, many police officers who saw this scene clenched their fists and gritted their teeth, bearing some kind of emotion with a heavy face. Except for the children, almost all the police officers here had seen the war when the protozoa first appeared 10 years ago. It was a hellish scene. Burning streets. Burning farms. Even people who were burning. The dark sky and the bright red flames formed a perfect dividing line. Presumably, now, the battlefield presented on the big screen made these policemen present involuntarily recall the hellish scene 10 years ago, right? However, regardless of the feelings of these police officers, on the big screen, the deafening explosions of cannons and impacts that could shake the atmosphere from the battlefield were mixed with the low growls, roars, and howls of the primitive animals. They kept ringing one after another. Noah was also watching the whole thing in silence. After an unknown amount of time, the sound of gunfire gradually subsided, and the cries of the protogut animals also became softer. Then, whether it was the protozoa's side or the self-defense forces camp, they all abruptly fell silent. On the burning plains, the silence and darkness of the night covered everyone's vision, causing them to look at each other in dismay. How is it? Did the self-defense forces win? They should have won, right? Even the sound of the protozoa has disappeared. So, the self-defense forces should have repelled the protozoa and are now returning in triumph, right? In the vast hall, a group of policemen were talking and praising each other, but the tension in the air exposed their inner feelings. Obviously, the police officers of Fairy Tale were also nervous. Although Noah had made the decision not to participate in the war, everyone was still very concerned about how the war would develop next and what kind of fate the Yodo region would face. Only Noah, while a group of police officers praised and talked, stared at the black smoke that covered the entire battlefield on the big screen in front of him, and his expression became more and more serious. After a while, Noah sighed. The self-defense forces were all wiped out. As soon as this sentence fell, in the black smoke that filled the battlefield, a large number of protogut animals rushed out frantically like a dense swarm of ants. Under the trembling sound of the earth, they rushed in the direction of the Yodo area. As for the self-defense forces, not a single person could be seen. Seeing this scene, everyone in the main building was speechless, and there was no way for them to speak. Probably, it was just as Noah said. The self-defense forces were all wiped out. More and more people stayed in the main building of Fairy Tale. Everyone looked at the image displayed on the big screen in silence. On the map, there were only about 100 groups. Including the initiator and promoter, there were only 200 police officers and the army of protozoa that had a great disparity in numbers. It might be an exaggeration to say that it was one-sided. After all, even if the promoter was not included, the initiator had the power to match or even surpass the protozoa. In the confrontation with the protozoa army, both sides suffered losses. However, careful people would be able to see that although both sides suffered losses, the advancement of the protozoa army did not decrease, and the front line formed by the police officers was losing ground. If this continued, the protozoa would sooner or later approach the interior of the Yodo region, flood into the Yodo region, and carry out a purposeless massacre. Seeing this, Noah was no longer interested in continuing to watch. However, in the next moment, Noah, who was about to turn around and leave, suddenly stopped and looked at the big screen in front of him. What is that? In the main building, a hoarse voice sounded. It was because the scene displayed on the big screen was almost incomprehensible to everyone present. In the sky of the battlefield, a dazzling beam of light suddenly fell from the sky, cut through the atmosphere and black smoke, and landed on the battlefield. The beam of light swept across nearly half of the battlefield. Individuals in the positions swept by the beam of light, regardless of whether they were protozoa or humans, all disappeared from the scene. Suffering such a sudden attack, the police officers who formed the frontline panicked and retreated even more. The situation of the battle took a turn for the worse. Whoosh! Everyone present was in an uproar. For a while, there was no way to stop. Even Noah frowned. What was that just now? A beam of light? Where did the beam come from? Was it an attack launched by the protozoa? If that was the case, the police auxiliary force would never have a chance of winning. The reality was just as Noah guessed. Under the threat of the inexplicable beam of light, the situation of the battle was truly one-sided. The people of the police auxiliary force were already retreating, resisting desperately while barely holding the front line. However, if this continued, sooner or later, the police would still be defeated. Woo 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 woo. At this moment, a long and drawn-out cry soared into the sky and drilled into everyone's ears. It was the cry of Aldebaran. However, the cry of Aldebaran was full of pain, as if it had suffered a major blow. When the cry of Aldebaran sounded, the protozoa that were originally attacking suddenly stopped attacking and began to move at the same time. The caterpillar-type protogut animals that crawled on the ground, as well as the insect-type and bird-type protogut animals that flew in the sky, gathered around the fifth sign of Bai. It was as if they were using their bodies as shields or to protect the fifth sign of Bai, protecting it. Under the protection of a large number of flying protozoa like mosquitoes, Aldebaran turned around and retreated. Looking at the protozoa army that gradually turned into a blurry shadow on the big screen, everyone began to discuss noisily. It seemed that because Aldebaran was injured, the protozoa army chose to retreat. The Yodo region temporarily escaped the disaster. Noah closed his eyes, turned around, and walked out of the main building. Just like that, the first scene of the Third Kanto War ended with the total destruction of the self-defense forces and the retreat of the protozoa army. Chapter 161. The next day, standing by the window, Noah was looking at the scenery outside. It was a scene that made people wonder if they were in a dream. The sky was gray. Thick clouds covered the entire sky, and it was drizzling. However, the rain was black. Early this morning, the Tokyo area collectively had a black rain. This was not without reason. Yesterday, the monolith collapsed. According to news reports, when the monolith collapsed, a large amount of dust flew into the sky, and even reached the stratosphere, forming a thick rain cloud. The sun was thus covered, and the Tokyo area would not be able to see the sun for about 3 days. The earthquake caused by the collapse of the monolith spread throughout the country, and even the Bodo area and Hokkaido area felt the shaking. The seismic waves from the collapsed monolith circled half the Earth, and the Pikes Peak Meteorological Observatory in Colorado, USA measured the seismic waves and recorded that the Earth's atmospheric pressure rose by 0.3 HPa. The latest meteorological observation model showed that the white dust from the monolith and the dust that was swept up would be affected by the west wind, and would spread to the north. It was estimated that the Hokkaido area would also be affected by the dust. Now, the black rain that fell on the entire Tokyo area was caused by the dust that was swept up when the monolith collapsed, and the dust from the monolith dissolved in the rain. The government said that although the black rain looked very vicious, there were no harmful substances in it, and even if the residents went out, they would not have to worry about the impact on their bodies. However, a lot of people were still skeptical about it. At the very least, no one would want to be drenched in the ominous rainwater that seemed to corrode their bodies at such a time. Therefore, including Fairy Tale, basically no one wanted to go out today. If possible, Noah also hoped that he would not go out. Unfortunately, reality was very cruel, and it shattered the little extravagant hope in his heart. Not long after, Noah's door was opened. Xia Shi and Tina entered Noah's room together in a dress. They looked at Noah, who was standing by the window and looking at the dark sky outside, and called out in a hesitant manner. "President, brother." Hearing this, Noah did not turn around and continued to look out of the window. "What's the matter?" Xia Shi and Tina glanced at each other. After a while, Xia Shi opened his mouth to speak. "There are guests outside." "Customer?" Noah's self-deprecating voice echoed. "Are you really here as a guest?" Xia Shi and Tina fell silent at the same time. Noah sighed faintly and turned around. "Where?" "Outside the fairy tale," Tina answered first. "There are too many of them, so they don't seem to want to enter the fairy tale." "Is that so?" Only then did Noah realize that he had to meet the customer in the rain. After another sigh, he lifted his feet and walked outside. The pitch-black rain fell to the ground with a splash sound. All the dry and cracked land in the outer area was dyed black. Mud, sand, and rainwater were all mixed together. Stepping on it made people feel like they were stepping on a swamp. It was very uncomfortable. With an umbrella in hand, Noah led Xia Shi, Tina, and the police officers from Fairy Tale out of the gate and went outside. On the opposite side of the fairy tale, a group of people gathered together as if they were in a formation. They quietly waited for Noah's arrival. Rentaro and Yen Zhu were among them. However, although Rentaro and Yen Zhu were standing at the front, the people leading them were not them. The one leading them was a man over 50 years old. He was bald and had a beard. His whole body emitted the aura of a martial artist, the promoter. From his appearance, he looked to be at least 50 years old. Among the promoters, who were mainly between 20 and 40 years old, he could be considered older. Beside the elderly promoter, there should be the initiator. She had long black hair, a very faint presence, and a demure temperament. She stood there like a shadow. With this pair of police officers as the leader, the group of police officers stood in front of Noah. There was no doubt that this group of police officers were the auxiliary police force that forced the Aldebaran to retreat on the battlefield yesterday. Today, these police officers who were supposed to be at the front line were all gathered here. Looking at their formation, it was as if they were here to condemn him. The atmosphere was filled with an inexplicable sense of tension. Noah stopped about 5 meters away from the person with the fairy tale. "I presume that you are President Noah?" The elderly man leading the group spoke with a dignified voice. "I am my hall chief. I am fortunate enough to become the army commander of this auxiliary police force." Noah slightly sized up my hall chief. His gaze suddenly stopped on one of his legs. No, it should not be said that it was a leg. Because the leg that should have been there had long disappeared. It was wrapped tightly in bandages. It was obvious that it had not been lost for long. My hall chief supported his missing leg with a crutch. He did not have the dispirited appearance of an ordinary disabled person. Instead, he was very dignified, and people could not help but admire him. Regarding this, Noah did not give any comments. He nodded at my hall chief. "I am the hall chief. Please state your intentions." I believe that President Noah should be able to easily guess my intentions. My hall chief used a sharp gaze to stare at Noah. "President Noah, Please dispatch the fairy tale police to fight with us and guard the entire Tokyo area." The whole place was silent. Only my hall chief's loud voice echoed in the surroundings. It turned into an echo, and after a while, it dissipated in the air. Noah's gaze was directly cast on my hall chief's serious face. He did not immediately respond. Only when some people began to become impatient did Noah speak indifferently. "Is this the only thing you want to say?" "President Noah." My hall chief stared at Noah. There was a bit of anger in his eyes. "We now need your strength to guard the Tokyo area. Do you want to become the sinner that will cause the Tokyo area to perish?" "So that's how it is." Noah acted as if he did not hear the content of my hall chief's words. He suddenly smiled, but there was not a hint of a smile in his eyes. "In other words, you are here to denounce us?" "You." Seeing Noah ignore my hall chief's words, the girl standing beside my hall chief seemed to be unable to endure my hall chief being insulted. She stepped forward with a stern face. "Morning glow." My hall chief scolded. "Come back." The girl named Dawn Break stopped in her tracks and retreated back to where she came from. I don't care if Fairy Tale has other methods to save their lives. However, since you live in the Tokyo area, then you are citizens of the Tokyo area. My hall chief looked at Noah coldly. "President Noah, do you know that people who watch their country in danger and watch coldly from the sidelines are usually called traitors?" Traitors. As soon as this sentence was said, the policemen led by my hall chief, except for Rentaro and Yen Zhu who had an anxious expression and wanted to say something, all of them showed an expression of indignation. On the other hand, the members of Fairy Tale, led by Noah, all had angry looks on their faces. They looked like they would charge out at any moment. "Are you trying to use the high hat of being righteous to pressure me?" On the contrary, Noah's gaze towards my hall chief gradually became bored. "I didn't think that you would use a boring method that even Tentong Chrysanthemum, that old guy, was not willing to use." Chapter 162. Clearly seeing Noah's uninterested expression, my hall chief tightly frowned, and his gaze on Noah became sharper and sharper. "It wasn't just me, Captain Takamasa. Apart from Rentaro and Yen Zhu, the rest of the police auxiliary force also showed anger. Obviously, they were very dissatisfied with Noah's words. Noah said this, isn't he saying that my hall chief pretended to be sanctimonious and pretended to be arrogant? Since my hall chief said this, then let me ask you, have you ever seen a country's people say, 'All of you deserve to die,' to their companions living in the same country?" Not giving my hall chief any chance to explain, Noah held an umbrella and looked directly at my hall chief through the dark rain. "My hall chief, you said that people who watch their country in danger and coldly watch from the sidelines, most people will call them traitors and traitors. Then, do you know that people who have been protecting them not only don't feel grateful, but are full of hatred? Most people will call them biting the hand that feeds them and biting the hand that feeds them." Everyone in the police auxiliary force was suddenly speechless. Not to mention the promoters, in the auxiliary police force, just the initiators, all showed depressed and sorrowful expressions. Needless to say, Noah's words completely entered their hearts. "President Noah, I understand your feelings, but the people are ignorant, we can't let them do whatever they want." Sensing that their morale began to decline, my hall chief quickly said, "Even if the people in the Tokyo area are not worth saving, this land is still our country. Even if it's not for the sake of the people, we still have to protect this country, right?" Even my hall chief said the words "not for the sake of the people." Obviously, the actions of the people in the Tokyo area also made this old police officer feel very disdain. However, Noah will not agree with my hall chief's statement. "Good, this land is still our country," Noah said with a smile, and then said something that made everyone stunned. "Then, my hall chief, how can you be sure that I'm a citizen of the Tokyo area?" Even my hall chief, when he heard this, couldn't help but be stunned. "Noah?" Rentaro, who had been silent, couldn't help but blurt out with a face full of shock. "You? Are you not a citizen of the Tokyo area?" "I came to the Tokyo area a year ago, and created Fairy Tale here, but I am indeed an outsider, you can see from the form of my name. If you don't believe me, you can check if there is any account of me in the Tokyo area. Noah said indifferently. And in this year, I have witnessed the ugly side of the people in the Tokyo area, witnessed the dark side of the politicians here, plus the suffering of the children. Please tell me, will I have a sense of belonging to this kind of land? The citizens of the Tokyo area are ignorant, but that is also their nature. Noah's voice clearly echoed around. Even if we saved the Tokyo area, so what? Will they let go of their hatred for the cursed child? Will they be grateful to us for saving them? Will they accept our existence because of this? No. None of them. Noah said with extreme sarcasm. Not to mention that the cursed child, even the police, when the time comes, will definitely not be thanked like a hero. This, as the so-called hero who killed Scorpio, I can guarantee you. Not a single person present could utter a single word of rebuttal. No matter where the police go, they belong to the group of people who are not welcome. Let's not talk about the problem of there being a lot of ruffians and even criminals among the police. Let's talk about the world's view of the police. From the police's point of view, the police who intruded into the jurisdiction and interfered with the scene were like a thorn in their side. From the self-defense force's point of view, their duty of national defense was judged by the police. Of course, they would not put on a good face. For example, in the Third Kanto War, the police auxiliary forces legion must have been placed in a dispensable position in the name of the decisive force. The self-defense forces obviously hoped to solve the protozoa without relying on the police. As a result, in the end, the self-defense forces did not send a signal for help to the police auxiliary force until they were completely wiped out. This caused the police to act as if to make up for the lack of combat power after the protozoa defeated the self-defense forces. If the self-defense forces cooperated with the police auxiliary force from the beginning, it would definitely be a different situation. Now, the self-defense forces were completely wiped out, and the people of the police auxiliary force also injured Aldebaran at the cost of losing a leg, resulting in the temporary retreat of the protozoa army. Undoubtedly, this was something that even the self-defense forces could not do. However, in the eyes of the people in the Yodo area was still in a crisis. The results achieved by the police auxiliary force were like nothing. Not only were they ignored, but many people were also cursing and even laughing at them. Who would be willing to save such a group of ugly people? Therefore, as Noah said, even if the Third Kanto War was won, the people would still not look at the police in a different light, let alone praise them. In the end, what the police obtained was nothing more than an increase in the IP ranking and some compensation. In exchange for it with their lives. It's not impossible for you to use the fairy tale, as long as you give me a reason. In the end, Noah used such a sentence to sink the hearts of everyone present. And if the method you use to persuade me is to use the so-called profound righteousness, then please allow me to say something. Noah looked around at the people of the police auxiliary force and sneered. To hell with your righteousness. Oh. As soon as Noah's voice fell, the people of Fairy Tale collectively cheered. Coo. Almost all of the people of the police auxiliary force showed expressions of unwillingness and anger, but they were completely helpless. They could only look at Aldebaran sullenly, and for a moment, there was no sound. Noah. Rentaro clenched his fists tightly, and was struggling in his heart. Noah's words were equivalent to denying Rentaro, who also wanted to carry out the righteousness. However, Rentaro could not find a reason to refute. This was because, compared to the actions of the residents of the Tokyo area, the so-called righteousness was not convincing at all. President Yenju was at a loss. On one hand, she did not doubt Noah's words, but on the other hand, as kind as she was, she could not bear to see other people in pain, so she was also struggling. Aldebaran's partner, the initiator, named Morning Glow, seemed to respect Aldebaran very much. When she saw Aldebaran being denied, she also showed an angry expression, but she also understood that Noah was doing this for the sake of their cursed child, so she became the third person to struggle. Only my hall master Changzheng let out a melancholic sigh. President Noah, it seems that no matter what, you are not willing to do anything, right? Oh. Noah said sarcastically. In other words, as the leader of Aldebaran, you can't find a reason to convince me to do anything, right? You're right, I can't find a reason to convince you to do anything. The hall master admitted it openly, but his gaze toward Noah became sinister in a short moment. So, I can only create a reason myself. After saying that, without giving anyone time to react, the hall master stomped on the ground with his remaining leg and suddenly rushed to Noah's side. Gotcha! After a light sound, a pitch-black tachi was placed on Noah's neck. President. Behind him, the members of Fairy Tale cried out in alarm and wanted to rush over. Stop! Aldebaran roared as he tightened his grip on the tachi on Noah's neck. If he comes one step closer, I will cut off his head. Chapter 163. If he takes another step closer, I'll chop off his head. Following Nagamasa's roar, the members of Fairy Tale all stopped in their tracks with a regretful expression on their faces. President. Xiashi, Hina, and Yanju all cried out in alarm. Xiashi and Hina, who were closer to Noah, immediately raised their guns and aimed at Nagamasa. However, when they saw the black katana Nagamasa was holding against Noah's neck, they froze in place, and only worry remained on their faces. Nagamasa. Ryotaro looked as if he had never expected that his clan chief would suddenly do such a thing. He took a step forward and shouted out loud. What are you doing? Captain Rikimi, please shut your mouth. Nagamasa looked at Ryotaro coldly. I have my own way of doing things, I don't need you to criticize me. You. Ryotaro gritted his teeth and stared at Nagamasa as if he wanted to bite off a piece of meat from him. Is this the righteous cause you insist on? I told you, I have my own way of doing things. Nagamasa coldly replied. It's not your place to criticize me. Bastard. Ryotaro also showed a regretful expression. On the other hand, Noah, who was being held hostage by Nagamasa, didn't panic in the slightest. In fact, he even had a small smile on his face. So that's how it is. If you can't convince him, you'll just take him down. That's exactly what a police officer would do. I can't help it. If I didn't do this, I really wouldn't be able to find a reason to convince you. Nagamasa closed his eyes and said expressionlessly. So, now, can I ask President Noah to mobilize Fairy Tale? So you're willing to do anything to achieve your goal? Noah curled his lips. No wonder you can become the leader of a group of outlaws. You're like an ambitious and ruthless person. I've underestimated your cunning. No matter what you say, you won't be able to shake my determination. My cousin tightened his grip on the knife, bringing it closer to Noah's neck. Guild leader Noah, please cooperate. This is for your own good. Despicable. Behind him, someone in the Fairy Tale group cursed angrily. Even the policemen in the auxiliary police force lowered their heads. Compared to the righteous attitude they had at the beginning, it was simply two extremes. She came to someone else's territory aggressively to interrogate them, and she always thought that she was the one who was right because she was the righteous one. In the end, Noah's 2 to 3 sentences had disintegrated the aggressive attitude of the auxiliary police force. His righteous way of doing things had also shattered their self-confidence that they were the most correct. It had to be said that the current auxiliary police force no longer had the qualifications to question the Fairy Tale. Naturally, they subconsciously did not dare to face the Fairy Tale with righteousness. Everything is for the sake of protecting the Tokyo area. My cousin said with a calm expression. Aldebaran is only injured. After he recovers, he will make a comeback. It will take 3 days to complete the new monolith. During this time, if Aldebaran attacks again, we have no chance of winning. Guild leader Noah, we can only ask for your help. The number of policemen in Fairy Tale was even greater than the number of policemen in the auxiliary police force. What's more, among the policemen in Fairy Tale, there were also a lot of IP that were ranked at the top and had extraordinary strength. Coupled with the large number of cursed children, if Fairy Tale went out to fight, the possibility of stopping the Protogut animal army would increase by a lot. Noah also had the bullet that could kill Scorpio. If he used the bullet to kill Aldebaran, who was like the leader of the Protogut animal army, at that time, the Protogut animals that had lost Aldebaran's command would just be a sheet of loose sand, and the difficulty of dealing with them would greatly increase. Therefore, in order to repel the Protogut animal army, obtain the victory of the Third Kanto War, and protect the entire Tokyo area, my cousin did not hesitate to use this method. It was all because Fairy Tail's influence on the battle was too great, too great. My cousin had no other choice. Unfortunately, my cousin's choice could not be said to be wrong, but it could not be said to be right. The reason why it could not be said to be wrong was very simple. It was because this method was indeed the most efficient method. The reason why it could not be said to be right was even simpler. My cousin had misjudged the strength. I do not deny that although your method was not the most correct, it was the most efficient. Noah looked straight ahead, and his voice drilled into my cousin's ears. It's just that, you can't possibly think that you can take me down like this, right? Hearing this, my cousin's pupils suddenly constricted, and a sense of alarm suddenly rose in his heart. My cousin's expression changed, and without hesitation, he swung the sword on Noah's neck and placed it horizontally in front of his chest. Clang! In the next moment, a gorgeous sword light flashed out of the air without warning, and heavily fell on the sword that was placed horizontally in front of my cousin's chest. Clang! The sound of steel colliding with steel rang out. Humph! Our hall master Zheng only felt an extremely frightening force suddenly hit his saber, and the vibration caused the web between his thumb and forefinger to rupture. His entire body seemed to have been hit by a mountain, and with a muffled groan, he was sent flying, and fiercely smashed into the ground not far away. Goo! The pain that was transmitted from his back caused his head to feel numb. It was a long while later before he woke up. With a flip of his body, he stood up with one knee on the ground. He raised his eyes and looked in Noah's direction. It was only at this moment that my cousin noticed. On the opposite side, in the hands of Noah, who was still being held hostage by my cousin just a second ago, an extremely dazzling knight's sword appeared out of nowhere. Oh! Holding the knight's sword, Noah glanced at my cousin who was kneeling on the ground not far away. As expected of the IP-ranked 275th police officer, to be able to dodge my sword, even if I didn't use my full strength, it is enough to prove that your skills are not bad. My cousin didn't reply, but his face was full of seriousness. He miscalculated. My cousin didn't consider that Noah also had outstanding fighting strength, and rashly made a move, leading the situation to the worst point. The people of the auxiliary police force finally reacted. Other than Rentaro and Yen Zhu who didn't know what to do, everyone else ran behind my cousin. Chao Xia even stood in front of my cousin and looked at Noah with vigilance. The people of Fairy Tail sneered as they stood behind Noah, and already pulled out their weapons. Xia Shi and Hina stood beside Noah with faces full of anger, as if to protect him from another sneak attack. I'm the hall leader. I believe you understand that although your method is the most efficient, it's also the most risky, right? Noah slowly sheathed the sword in his hand back into the scabbard in the side pouch and looked at Hall Master Changzheng. Because if you fail, it means that you have to start a war with me, Fairy Tail, with the already understaffed police auxiliary force. President Noah. My cousin's face finally showed signs of wavering, and loudly roared. The auxiliary police force is used to fight against protozoa. Do you want the last hope of the Tokyo region to be buried in your own hands? People need to be responsible for their own words and actions. Noah turned his back. This sentence, I should have said it in front of everyone in the Tokyo region. As soon as Noah finished speaking, the people of Fairy Tail collectively raised their guns and pointed them at the auxiliary police force. The people of the auxiliary police force also immediately set up their guns and started firing. Seeing that a dispute was about to start because of different principles, someone finally stood up to stop it. Stop. Chapter 164. Between Fairy Tail and the auxiliary police force, a figure appeared. It was as if he was blocking the muzzles of both sides. Even though his face was dripping with sweat, he still opened his arms and stood between the two without any warning. Rentaro! Yen Zhu exclaimed in shock. Noya! Rentaro stared at Noah's back as he walked past him. Stop it. Noah didn't reply. He maintained his posture with his back turned for a full 10 seconds before he sighed. In the end, you still decided to stand up. Ryutaru was left speechless. He took a deep breath and laughed bitterly. Our common enemy is the protozoa. Furthermore, Tokyo is facing a huge crisis right now. I can't let you kill each other. You have to understand, Rentaro. Noah turned around and faced Rentaro. Killing each other means harming one's own people. We're on the same side. Rentaro took a step forward and said agitatedly. We're all Tokyo police force, yet you're pointing your guns at each other. Isn't that killing each other? So, even though you might be shot to death, you still want to stand between us and stop us? Noah smiled. His smile was filled with emotion. This time, you can't deny that you're the type of person who will die young, right? Ah. That's right. That's how despicable you are. Rentaro said angrily. His eyes were still fixed on Noah. You said before that you won't forgive those who hurt your family and friends. However, these people didn't hurt your family or friends. I hope you won't do anything to them. Hearing this, Noah glanced at Rentaro, who was kneeling on one knee and being protected by the auxiliary police force. Rentaro looked at him with a serious expression on his face. Then, he turned his gaze to Rentaro. I'm not interested in playing this game of protecting the country with you in this kind of weather. Take them away. However, even after hearing Noah's words, Rentaro still stood there without moving. He stared at Noah without letting go. Everyone looked at each other in dismay when they saw Rentaro's reaction. What is he doing? Noah was also confused. However, after a while, when he saw the determination in Rentaro's eyes, he immediately understood what Rentaro was thinking. Rentaro. Noah furrowed his eyebrows. Do you want me to change my mind? Hearing this, everyone present understood what was going on. Rentaro was also trying to persuade Noah to bring Fairy Tail into the war. To be honest, when I found out from the TV that Fairy Tail was planted with bombs by the trash in the Tokyo area and became the object of their fear and panic, I also felt ashamed of being part of the same, plundered generation as them. Rentaro stared at Noah. Those bastards, on the one hand, mocked us in the dark, and even trampled on the cursed child. On the other hand, they hope that we will protect them. They are the most damned group of people in the world. I once thought of not participating in the war like you, but in the end, I still chose this path. Noah didn't say anything. Along with the rest of the people, he quietly listened to Rentaro's narration. Uphold justice, this is the phrase I heard the most after becoming a police officer. Rentaro lowered his open hand with a determined expression. Those trash in the Tokyo area no longer have justice, but it is precisely because of this that we need to uphold justice. We can't let justice disappear from this world. Otherwise, this world will only be left with despair. Rentaro. Beside him, Yenju couldn't help but call out softly. The group of police auxiliary troops led by the head of the police also lowered their heads, they seemed to be somewhat moved. As for the members of Fairy Tail, they all looked at each other and remained silent. Noah's eyes flickered, and finally, there was a trace of wavering in his heart. Since that day when Fairy Tail was planted with bombs and became the victims of others for no reason, Noah's disappointment in the humans of this world rose to the peak. Noah knew that this world was far from being as beautiful as the other worlds. The humans here had already exhausted all of their mental and physical strength just to survive, so much so that even the bad and ugly side of humanity had taken root and sprouted under the pressure, causing this world to be full of darkness. Therefore, at that time, Noah thought. Was it really worth saving such a group of people? This answer, until now, Noah still couldn't come to a conclusion. However, the residents of the Tokyo area really did want to harm the children of Fairy Tail, and some people even took pleasure in it, making Noah unable to stop his anger. No matter what the final answer was, those who tried to harm Fairy Tail, hurt his family and companions, as the president of Fairy Tail, he absolutely couldn't let them go. Before this, Noah had always thought like this. Noah also never thought that what he did was wrong. If he couldn't even protect his family and companions, then how could he protect the entire region, the entire country, and even the entire world? What's more, Noah, who grew up in fairy tale and another world, understood the value of companions and family the most. Makarov also always took protecting the guild, his family, and his companions as his goal. And that also became the principle in Noah's heart. That was also the principle in the hearts of every fairy tale member. Whether it was this world's fairy tale or this world's fairy tale. Or was it the fairy tale from the other world? It was all the same. I don't want to cultivate justice at all. Noah raised his head and said word by word to Rentaro. I'm not that great, as long as I can protect my family, my companions, and my guild, that's enough. Then, for the sake of justice, I'll let you see my determination. Rentaro raised his fist and aimed it at Noah. Even if I have to drag you by force, I'll drag you to the battlefield. As soon as he finished speaking, Rentaro's straight right hand suddenly trembled. Kacha! Following the sound of something cracking, the skin on Ryutaru's right hand and right leg began to crack. They began to peel off like burning flames as they fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone, including Noah, showed a shocked expression. Then, the true appearance of Rentaro's right hand and right foot was exposed to everyone's eyes. It was a prosthetic arm made of pitch-black metal. Rentaro's right hand and right foot had already been lost. Now, in place of his real right hand and right foot, the prosthetic arm that was attached to Rentaro's body was clearly a mechanical prosthetic arm made of pyrolite. Not only his right hand and right foot, but one of Rentaro's eyeballs also started to rotate, and like a switch, a geometrical image appeared within it. Even his eye was a specially made prosthetic eye. That posture was just like, how could this be? Hina was the first to speak in a daze. Mechanical soldier, Rentaro. Noah's eyes gradually focused. Let's introduce ourselves. Rentaro suddenly shouted as he raised his metal prosthetic hand. Former Ground Self-Defense Force Eastern Division 787th Mechanized Special Unit, New Human Creation Project Riken Rentaro. The New Human Creation Project's mechanical soldier. Just like Leech Kajian and Hina. Rentaro was also an existence that surpassed the realm of humans. Tendo Combat Technique Form 1/3 level. Rentaro suddenly got into a charging posture and pulled his metal prosthetic arm behind his back. Boom! Following the sound of an explosion, a golden eggshell bounced off Rentaro's prosthetic arm. Reindeer ambush. Taking advantage of the momentum generated by firing the cannon, Ryutaru dashed forward in Noah's direction. Chapter 165. Whoosh! In front of everyone present, Ryutaru's body turned into a blur under the powerful thrust. The prosthetic arm on his right hand seemed to have fused with his body, turning into a long spear. It pierced through the air and rushed towards Noah with a sharp sound. Hearing the sharp sound, Noah knew that the current Ryutaru was no longer the same as the usual Ryutaru. He directly stomped his foot, and his figure flashed, strangely disappearing from where he stood. Whoosh! Having suddenly lost his target, Ryutaru's expression changed slightly, and he quickly scanned his surroundings. The geometric pattern on his prosthetic eye immediately started to rotate and retract like a camera. The next moment, as if Ryutaru sensed something, he abruptly changed his direction. The metal prosthetic arm drew an arc in the air and blasted behind him. Clang! A loud clashing sound rang out, bringing with it some sparks that sputtered out in the field. Ryutaru's fist that was blasted behind him collided with a dazzling night sword that suddenly appeared behind him. Ugh! Noah was shocked when he felt the tremendous force coming from the night sword in his hand. It must be noted that Noah's body had not only been tempered for a long time, but it had also been strengthened countless times by the gastronomic virus. Even so, Noah felt some resistance from the force coming from Ryutaru's fist. It was easy to imagine how powerful Ryutaru's punch was. Little did he know that Ryutaru was even more shocked. The metal used in Ryuteru's prosthetic arm was not ordinary lutetium. It was another type of metal called super lutetium. It was a next-generation alloy with lutetium as the base and a mixture of rare and ordinary metals. It had a hardness and a melting point several times that of ordinary lutetium. Ryuteru's prosthetic arm was also equipped with 10 bullets for his wrist and 15 bullets for his feet. By using the thrust generated by firing these bullets, Ryuteru could obtain extraordinary attack power. It was a super attack power that could even destroy a stage 4 gastronomic virus in one hit. In the end, Noah blocked it with ease. Naturally, Noah did not know the shock in Ryuteru's heart. He withdrew the knight's sword in his hand and fiercely chopped down at Ryuteru with an oppressive force. Bang! Ryuteru, who finally reacted, hurriedly controlled the prosthetic leg on his right leg and fired the ammo cartridge. His body immediately used the thrust of the cartridge to glide past like a gliding fighter jet. At the same time, a thruster-like force erupted from his feet as he retreated rapidly. Clang! The knight's sword with a sharp sword light flashed past Ryuteru's original position and cut through the air. Noah's gaze and his body tensed up. And he shot out like an arrow and chased after Ryuteru. In the field, two figures suddenly flashed and appeared. Not long after, they met each other. Clang! The knight's sword clashed against the metal fist as Noah and Rentaro exchanged a fierce blow. Thump! 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 As the strong wind spread, Ryuteru took more than 5 steps back. On the other hand, Noah did not even take a single step back. Obviously, in terms of strength, even if Ryuteru unleashed the power of a mechanized soldier, Noah still had the upper hand. Noah's body turned into a black line and rushed toward Ryuteru. Every time his foot landed, it would leave a half-inch deep footprint on the ground. His powerful momentum was like that of a humanoid gastronomic virus, and it was extremely shocking. Seeing Noah rushing toward him with the momentum of a thunderbolt, Ryuteru finally understood that he had underestimated Noah. Tendo-style combat art form 2, 14th level. Ryuteru clenched his teeth and spun around. The spinning speed was so fast that it caused him pain. He stared at Noah, who was getting closer and closer, and let out a low roar. Hidden Zen. Xian Minghua. Ryuteru's right leg, which had turned into a black lightning bolt, lashed out like a whip and fired the cartridge again. Huff. 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 Every time Ryuteru kicked out, a shadow of a leg would appear in front of him. In just an instant, the shadow of a metallic leg shrouded the space in front of Ryuteru. At that moment, Noah, who was sprinting, appeared in the space filled with leg shadows in the blink of an eye. Ha! The shadow of a leg stopped in midair. Under the push of the cartridge, each shadow of a leg had enough power to penetrate a steel wall. With Ryuteru's roar, the shadow of a leg fell on Noah like raindrops or a storm. Within his dark pupils, a pitch-black shadow of a leg was flashing. A strong gust of wind was also rushing towards Noah's face. However, Noah didn't flinch at all. Instead, he raised his knight's sword and fiercely slashed forward. The path of the knight's sword was very ordinary. There wasn't the slightest bit of fancy in it. It was just a normal slash, but it carried an unparalleled momentum that could split mountains and split the air. It even left a mark in the air, and a strong wind gathered at the edge of the sword. Clink, 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 clink. Suddenly, the shadow of a leg collided with the sharp knight's sword, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. The shadow of a leg that collided with the knight's sword seemed to be scattered and disappeared in the air. The shadow of the leg also disappeared rapidly. Tendo-style combat art form I, 15th level. In the end, Ryuteru finally gave up on this flashy attack. He withdrew his leg, clenched his fist, and twisted his body to face Noah. Bang! As the cartridge on his leg was fired, Ryuteru shot toward Noah like a cannonball. Yunling Bihu Carp. A fist made of black metal tore through the air with lightning speed. A sharp wind gathered at the tip of the fist, and it directly fell on Noah's head. The black fist enlarged rapidly in Noah's eyes, causing him to narrow his eyes slightly. The knight's sword in his hand was withdrawn in an extremely nimble manner. Like a shield, he stood in front of Noah. The pitch-black fist landed squarely on the body of the knight's sword. Clang! In the loud sound of the collision, Ryudaru's fist suddenly exploded with a tyrannical force, and it continuously acted on the knight's sword. Hiya! Ryudaru's angry roar spread far and wide in the air, and the force in his hand continued to burst forth. Bang! 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 Perhaps Ryudaru knew that his fist alone could not pose a threat to Noah, so he controlled his metal prosthesis like a madman and fired 5 cartridges in succession. Every time he fired a cartridge, the power of his fist would increase by an entire level. Bang! Noah could clearly feel the force exerted on the knight's sword getting stronger and stronger. In the end, it was so strong that even Noah felt some pressure. Hiya! Ryudaru roared with all his might, and the veins on his forehead were already bulging. He crazily vented his strength, and he heavily pushed his fist away from Noah's knight's sword. Bang! The force of the impact spread out, and even the air became turbulent. Under the tremendous force, Noah's feet rubbed against the ground, and he slid back 2 to 3 meters before he could stop himself. Bang! Immediately after, the sound of the cartridge being fired echoed again. Ryudaru's roar sounded behind this sound. Tendo-style combat technique, Form 2, Level 11. Ryudaru's feet were almost above his head, and his body spun up and down like a top. The thrusters on his legs also burst forth with a strong light, and like a whirlwind, he approached Noah. Hidden Zen. Wei Ting. With a heavy kick, he viciously kicked the knight's sword in Noah's hand. Bang! A huge sound reverberated like an explosion, and a shockwave visible to the naked eye spread out like ripples. With Noah's feet as the center, cracks continuously spread out on the hard ground, forming cracks. Chapter 166. Bang! Under everyone's watchful eyes, the ground in front of the 2 combatants began to crack inch by inch with a muffled sound. Like a spider web, cracks began to spread across the ground. The shock waves from the impact spread outwards, causing the ground to crack inch by inch and send gravel flying in all directions. Many of the spectators felt a stinging pain on their cheeks. Some of the gravel even left deep cuts on their faces, causing them to bleed profusely. Step back! The preceptor hurriedly shouted. The entire auxiliary police force, who had lost their heads out of fear, immediately retreated and looked towards the center of the battlefield with fearful expressions. We'll step back as well. On the other hand, Xia Shi was the one who made the decision for the fairy tale side. Under his command, everyone retreated a certain distance away from the gravel that was flying towards them like bullets. Everyone's eyes were glued to the scene before them. Their eyes were filled with shock at Ryudaru's new identity and power, as well as shock at Noah's ability to hold his own against Ryudaru without falling into a disadvantageous position. Bang! Then, with another muffled sound, 2 figures flew out from the center of the battlefield where the shockwaves were spreading outwards. They scraped against the ground, creating 2 long trenches. It was not until they were more than 10 meters away from each other that they steadied themselves and looked at each other. Upon closer inspection, the expressions of Noah and Rentaro, who were standing opposite each other from a distance, were also different. Rentaro was tightly gripping his pitch-black metal prosthetic arm. The prosthetic leg on his right foot was also tightly fastened to the ground. His prosthetic eye, which had a geometric pattern on it, was staring at the figure opposite him. His chest was heaving up and down, and his face was slightly pale. It seemed that he had expended a lot of energy. Noah, on the other hand, was still holding the dazzling knight's sword. He wasn't panting, and his expression was still as steady as before. Other than his clothes being slightly dirted, he didn't show any other signs of abnormality. At this point, it was obvious who was giving their all in this battle, and who was still at ease. Noah looked at Ryudaru, who was panting heavily, and a heartfelt smile finally appeared on his face. You're quite capable, aren't you? So that's how it is, Rentaro. So this is the power you've been hiding all this time. Ever since I met you, I felt that you weren't simple at all. You've really hidden it well. I'll return the same to you. Ryotaro calmed his breathing and looked at Noah with a serious expression. I didn't expect that even after releasing my powers, I still wouldn't be able to defeat you. It's no wonder you have the ability to train an initiator at Yenju's level. You've hidden your abilities well. It's a pity. Noah smiled calmly at first, then slowly withdrew his smile. If that's all you've got, I'd like to see how you're going to drag me onto the battlefield. After saying that, Noah swung his hand that was holding the sword. While drawing an arc of light, he slowly sheathed his sword back into the scabbard that he had been holding tightly in his left hand all this while. He then lifted the cloth bag that contained the scabbard and put away the knight's sword that had been sheathed back into the scabbard. Seeing Noah put away his weapon, not only the spectators, but even Ryotaro couldn't help but be stunned. What's the meaning of this? Noah didn't answer. Instead, he tossed the side pouch in the direction of Fairy Tail, and it was caught by Tina. This time, Ryotaro understood. Noah was planning to fight him barehanded. In that instant, Ryotaro couldn't help but feel a little angry at being looked down upon. Although Rentaro was also fighting barehanded, his right hand and right leg, which were made by chakra, were much tougher than normal weapons. Strictly speaking, they weren't even considered hands. In addition, if Rentaro were to fire the ammo cartridge hidden in his prosthetic limb, his attack power would increase by several folds. Since he could even penetrate a stage 4 protozoan in one hit, it would be a dead end if he were to face it with a pure human body. At that moment, Ryotaro revealed a somewhat stubborn smile. I won't go easy on you. Hearing this, Noah still didn't say a word. He only extended his hand and waved at Ryotaro. Ryotaro's mind heated up, and he crouched down. Then, like a spring that had been released, he violently charged at Noah. He didn't hold back at all, and his heavy fist heavily smashed into Noah's chest. Noah's body immediately trembled, and his body appeared a dozen meters away amidst the faint sound of something breaking through the air. However, an extremely blurry afterimage remained where he was. Bang! Ryotaro's fist heavily penetrated Noah's afterimage and scattered it. Immediately after, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard again. Noah's figure suddenly appeared beside Ryotaro like a ghost. His fist, which was covered in pitch-black rainwater, carried a sharp gust of wind and a fierce force as it mercilessly smashed into Ryotaro's head. At this moment, Noah's terrifying speed caused Ryotaro's pupils to shrink, and his prosthetic eye began to spin wildly. The prosthetic eye that was inserted into Ryotaro's left eye was a high-performance computer wrapped in a graphite transistor specification nanocore processor with a superalloy shell. In addition to various sensors, the prosthetic eye was also equipped with a multiplication function that could increase the brain's thinking speed by thousands of times. Therefore, in Ryotaro's eyes, the flow of time was extremely slow. Even the movements of the cursed child were similar to slow motion in Ryotaro's eyes. It was precisely under such circumstances that Ryotaro was able to keep up with Noah's speed, agility, and movements that far exceeded that of a human. He also relied on his extremely high attack power to contend with Noah. However, now, Noah's speed was so much faster than before that Ryotaro, who had a special prosthetic eye, almost couldn't react in time. Almost like a conditioned reflex, Ryotaro tilted his numb head back. The fist, which carried a sharp gust of wind, immediately swung past Ryotaro's face, causing him to feel a burning pain on his face. Unfortunately, before Ryotaro could rejoice, Noah, who had flashed to his side, suddenly twisted his elbow and smashed it down. A sharp gust of wind formed at the tip of his elbow, and the ear-piercing sound caused Ryotaro's eardrums to sting. Ryotaro's expression changed. He hurriedly clenched his fist and threw an uppercut with his metal prosthetic arm, which heavily collided with Noah's elbow. Bang! As the ripples of the force spread out, the faint sound of bones rubbing against each other could be heard. When the metal fist made of super alloy collided with Noah's elbow, Ryotaro, who thought that Noah's arm, which was made of ordinary flesh and blood, should have been fractured, felt the powerful force contained in the fist in the next second. His face turned slightly pale, and under the powerful force, his body was directly smashed to the ground. Bang! With Ryataro's body as the center, cracks spread out from where he landed. Humph! Ryataro immediately let out a muffled groan. An unbearable pain came from his back, which was smashed to the ground, causing Ryataro's mind to go blank for a moment. Whoosh! At this time, Noah did not stop for a moment. He bent his toes slightly and kicked Ryataro's head, who was lying on the ground. From the looks of it, if Ryataro was kicked, he would probably pass out on the spot. The strong wind that came straight at his head made Ryataro's brain work in time. With a whoosh sound, cold sweat broke out all over his body. Ryataro had no time to think about how embarrassed he was, nor did he have time to think about how Noah was able to knock him, who had a super alloy prosthetic arm, to the ground in a head-on collision. Instead, he rolled on the ground and dodged Noah's dangerous kick. Before Ryataro could get up, the familiar sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Then, Noah, who was like a ghost, appeared in front of Ryataro again. His speed was even more terrifying than before. Hiya! After realizing that he could not shake off Noah, Ryataro's body suddenly tensed up. He shouted loudly, clenched his fist, and swung it at Noah, who appeared in front of him. Bang! A cartridge was fired, and the empty golden cartridge was thrown high into the air. Chapter 167. Bang! 2 golden cartridges were hurled into the air by the sound of the cartridge being fired. One was thrown from Rentaro's foot. The other was thrown from Rentaro's foot. Whoosh! An active firing pin that was suspected to be hidden inside Rentaro's nerves hit the bottom of the cartridge at his feet and discharged the cartridge. The movable thrusters at Rentaro's feet immediately spurted out sparks. Together with an acceleration that could blow people away, Rentaro's entire body was propelled forward. Under the effect of the thrusters on his foot, not only did Rentaro's body flip over from the rolling state, but he also charged toward Noah instead of retreating. Immediately after, the Mega Punch, which had also fired its cartridge and obtained a push force, erupted with an extremely sharp sonic boom. It seemed to have stripped the air in front of it as it swung straight in Noah's direction. The pitch-black fist enlarged in his pitch-black pupils. The corner of Noah's mouth lifted, and he did not flinch at all. In the face of Rentaro's extremely terrifying attack, he did not hesitate at all. His palm clenched into a fist, and under the gaze of Rentaro's widened eyes, he smashed it heavily toward the incoming fist. Bang! An ordinary fist and a pitch-black heavy metal fist collided heavily together. The loud explosion was like a clap of thunder, spreading out and reverberating in the air. A powerful shockwave rapidly spread out from the point of contact between the two fists. The hard ground immediately exploded as if it had been bombarded by artillery fire. Wah! The surrounding crowd let out cries of alarm. While they were fleeing in a sorry state, they were also enduring the impact of the wind. For a moment, they were in a panic. The impact of the collision naturally did not affect Noah and Rentaro at all. Ha! Noah's arm that had punched out slightly bent, then straightened up again. Under the push of Noah, he punched out with all his might. Ryutaru's face paled. The violent force from Chao Kei's fist passed through his entire artificial arm and affected Ryutaru's body, causing his entire body to become numb. His shoulders trembled rapidly, and his pitch-black artificial leg made a loud stomping sound as he retreated. Every time his foot landed, it would leave a deep footprint on the ground. Only after retreating a dozen steps did he manage to stop himself from retreating and come to a halt. The second time. Undoubtedly, Rentaro's opponent's fist was only made of flesh and blood. However, for the second time, Rentaro, who had the super punch and the cartridge, was repelled by Rentaro's punch. The only emotion left in Rentaro's heart was shock. Chi! At this moment, Noah displayed a ghostly speed once again. He clenched his fist tightly and fiercely smashed it toward Rentaro. Ryutaru was taken aback. He could only raise his right hand to block in front of him. Clang! Noah's fist heavily smashed into Rentaro's super punch, causing an unbelievable sound that sounded like steel clashing against steel. Rentaro was once again pushed back. He only managed to stabilize himself after taking 2 steps back. However, Noah also took a step forward and appeared in front of Rentaro again. He clenched his fist and pulled it back to his lower abdomen. In an instant, he threw out punch after punch. Clang! 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 In an instant, the extremely inconceivable sound of steel clashing against steel resounded one after another like rhythmic syllables. Even in the entire space, it was clearly audible. Under Noah's fierce punches, Rentaro was forced to retreat step by step. He could only raise his super punch to block Noah's heavy blows. He kept groaning, and his face became paler and paler. Witnessing Noah chasing after Rentaro like a ferocious beast, with every punch that he threw out causing a loud sound to ring out, and every step that Rentaro took back caused the ground to be smashed into pieces, everyone present was speechless. Gulp, someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Are they human? No one knew who made such a trembling voice. Everyone could only watch this scene in a daze, with different expressions on their faces. All the members of Fairy Tale raised their heads and puffed out their chests. Some of them had smiles on their faces and looked proud. Some of them looked in the direction of the auxiliary police force with sneers on their faces, as if they had just vented their frustrations. The people of the auxiliary police force looked at each other, speechless for a moment. Only then did they realize what kind of person they were trying to find trouble with. They all felt lucky that they didn't start a fight with Fairy Tale directly. Even Mayor Nagamasa showed a remorseful expression for a moment. If Mayor Nagamasa had known that Noah had such a level of combat power from the beginning, he definitely wouldn't have acted rashly. If he had known that Rentaro had such power in advance, he could have made arrangements in advance and made other plans. Only Yen Zhu was watching the intense battle between Noah and Rentaro. He secretly broke out in cold sweat for both sides. After all, Noah was equivalent to Yen Zhu's family and savior, while Rentaro was Yen Zhu's partner. No matter which side it was, Yen Zhu didn't want to see them get hurt. Clang 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 clang. In the arena, Noah continued to swing his arms that were so heavy that they did not seem human. He landed blow after blow on Ryuteru's righteous hand. When he saw Ryuteru's face turn paler and paler due to the increasingly heavy impact, he narrowed his eyes and abruptly moved to the side of Ryuteru. Whoosh! In the next moment, Noah turned sideways, spun around, and kicked Rentaro's hand. Clang! Rentaro was caught off guard and was directly sent flying by the kick, which was much heavier than a punch. His body was like a kite with a broken string, bouncing backward for more than 10 meters before he stabilized himself and landed on the ground with his foot. Bang! However, almost at the same time Rentaro landed on the ground, a foot kicked Rentaro's other foot, causing him to cry out in pain and kneel on the ground on one knee. Ugh! Rentaro squeezed out a muffled groan from his throat. Gritting his teeth, he was about to push himself up when his vision suddenly darkened, and a familiar figure appeared. He subconsciously raised his head and looked in front of him. After a while, Rentaro saw Noah's unusually calm face looking down at him from above. The scene of Rentaro kneeling on one knee in front of Noah was presented to everyone in the field. Looking at it this way, everyone could tell who had won and who had lost. That's it, Noah said regretfully as he looked down at Rentaro, who was looking up at him. It seems that Rentaro, you don't have the ability to drag me to the battlefield. Rentaro's expression hardened. Just as he was about to stand up, a black revolver with a large caliber was placed in front of him, and the muzzle was pointed at his forehead. You have no chance of winning, Rentaro. Even if you're the product of the new human creation project, the outcome has already been determined. Noah's tone was a little indifferent. If you want to continue, I won't hold back anymore. Rentaro's expression suddenly changed drastically. After a while, it turned into a strong sense of unwillingness. Are you still holding back? Noah didn't respond. Instead, he put away his gun, turned around, and walked toward Fairy Tale. Everyone around him lowered their heads and remained silent. Seeing this, Rentaro couldn't take it anymore and shouted. "Are you really not going to do anything? Noah." Noah didn't even turn his head as he continued to walk toward Fairy Tale. All the members of Fairy Tale obediently followed him. Damn it! Rentaro punched the ground with all his might. Rentaro. Yenju couldn't bear to see Rentaro like this and turned her head away. At this moment, President Noah. Chapter 168. President Noah. Following this voice, everyone present, whether it was the promoter or the initiator, whether it was the plundered generation or the cursed child, all widened their eyes in shock. Noah suddenly stopped in his tracks. Together with all the members of Fairy Tale, he froze on the spot. Basically, as long as you were a resident of Tokyo, you would recognize this voice. Even if you didn't hear it with your own ears, this voice has been heard countless times on TV. Immediately, everyone, including Noah, raised their heads and looked towards the source of the voice. Over there, a group of people were standing on a small hill, facing the people on this side. Among these people, there were old, young, men, and women. There were about 100 to 1,000 people. Even if they were scattered, they still filled up the top of the hill. They didn't bring umbrellas, nor did they bring any tools to shelter themselves from the rain. Just like that, they exposed themselves to the pitch-black rain, allowing the black raindrops to hit their bodies. A pair of bright, spirited eyes filled with hope and anticipation met this side, entering into the eyes of the crowd. At the front of these people, the Holy Son of Heaven stood at the head of the table, also exposing himself to the dark rain. His white body seemed to emit light, creating a sharp contrast with the dark rain around him, making it impossible for people to forget his figure at this moment. Lord Holy Son of Heaven. Everyone present let out a cry of surprise. When they saw the people standing behind the Holy Son of Heaven, they were stunned speechless. Lord Holy Son of Heaven. Yenju, Hina, Xiaoshi, and the others all said with a blank expression. Lord Holy Son of Heaven. My hall leader, who lost a leg, stood up with the help of Zhao Xia and said with some excitement. Why would Lord Holy Son of Heaven appear here like this? Please quickly take shelter from the rain. It seems that my hall leader was very surprised by the Holy Son of Heaven's action of standing in the dark rain. However, the one who responded to my hall leader's words was not the Holy Son of Heaven, but a beautiful figure who walked out from the crowd and came to the Holy Son of Heaven's side. I called Lord Holy Son of Heaven here. Looking at the beautiful figure standing next to the Holy Son of Heaven, Rentaro also showed a shocked expression. Miss Mugging? That is mugging. Seeing Xingtianzi and Mu Geng standing on the small hill with a group of people, their gazes converging in this direction, or more accurately, converging on him, Noah frowned. What are you all doing? President Noah. The Holy Son of Heaven clasped his hands together in prayer and placed them in front of his chest, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. The people here all came with me willingly. Is that so? Noah's brows still did not relax in the slightest. Bearing the hopeful and expectant gazes of those people, he spoke in a deep voice. What? Noah. Mugging took a step forward and shouted at Noah. Almost all of the people here are from the plundered generation, they are all residents of Tokyo. President Noah. The Holy Son of Heaven also raised his voice, bent his upper body forward, and shouted at Noah. They all have something to say to you, please listen to their voices. The audience was dead silent. Noah just raised his head and looked at the direction of the hill, his eyes slightly stirred up a circle of ripples. And under Noah's gaze, the men and women, old and young all looked at each other, stepped forward, bent their body, and bowed deeply to Noah. President Noah. Please save us. Save the entire Tokyo area. Such a sentence resounded loudly in the air and drilled into the ears of everyone present. All of the members of Fairy Tale were stunned. The police auxiliary force led by the head of the police department all had their mouths wide open, their faces were full of disbelief. Rentaro, Yenju, Hina, Xiaoshi, and the others were all speechless, showing a dazed expression. Noah's heart slightly trembled, his fists suddenly clenched. What's going on? What's going on? Is this a call for help from the plundered generation? Is this a call for help from the residents of Tokyo? Didn't they want Fairy Tale to disappear? Didn't they want all the cursed children to die? Didn't they not need other people's help? Didn't they not trust the ability of the police? In that case, what were they doing now? This is a request from the residents of Tokyo. Xing Tianzi was still praying with his hands clasped in front of his chest, like a saint guarding Noah, and closed his eyes. President Noah, I know that many people in the Tokyo area are rejecting the cursed child, and many of them are rejecting the fairy tale. When their lives are in danger, they even don't hesitate to vent their inner fear on the fairy tale, which has completely disappointed you in the Tokyo area. But, please believe in us, believe in the entire Tokyo area. Xing Tianzi raised his praying hand and pressed it against his forehead, his tone was sincere and pleading. This world is full of contradictions. The Tokyo area is the same. Some people reject you, but some people like you from the bottom of their hearts. Some people show their ugly and dark side everywhere, but there are also people who have always believed that the human heart is beautiful and kind in the end. The people here, even if they are about to face the invasion of the protogut animals, still have expectations for you. Even in this world full of despair, there is always hope in their hearts. Xing Tianzi opened his eyes and stared at Noah with strong emotions. This is the only hope left in this world, and also the only beauty left in humanity. So, President Noah, I beg you. Not in the name of justice. Not in the name of righteousness. Not for the country. Not for the Tokyo area. Please protect the only hope left in this world. After saying that, Elysian son of heaven heavily bent his body and gave Noah the most respectful bow he had ever given him. This bow was not a request to Noah as Xing Tianzi, but as an ordinary girl who also held hope in her heart and longed for peace, making a request to Noah. On the side, Mugino silently bent down and bowed. Rentaro stood up with Yenju's help and bowed as well. Our police chief and Asahi looked at each other and slowly bowed. The policemen of the police auxiliary force all looked at each other for a while, then showed a firm expression and bowed to Noah. President Noah. Behind Xing Tianzi and Mugino, the Tokyo area residents who still maintained a bowing posture once again let out a loud and clear voice. Please save us. All of the members of Fairy Tale were dumbfounded on the spot, unable to utter a single word. Xiaoshi and Hina turned their heads at the same time, and cast their eyes on Noah. Noah stared blankly at the people in front of him, looking at the determined expression on their faces and the light of hope in their eyes. His heart trembled, and trembled again. Hope. So, in this world, there is still hope. Buzz. At this time, in front of Noah, a gorgeous halo suddenly bloomed, like a halo enveloping the space in front of Noah. This gorgeous halo, no one present could see it. Noah was the only one who stared at the halo in front of him. An uncontrollable ripple appeared in his dark eyes. In the halo that no one could see, a dreamlike object was suspended there. It was a piece of feather. A piece of a feather that seemed to have been cut in half, with less than half remaining, was suspended in the crystal-like crystal ball, emitting a white halo. That was the most fundamental reason why Noah came to this world after searching for more than a year in this world. World fragment. The world fragment that couldn't be found for a long time, now, in this world's last remaining hope, appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 169. Walala. The dark rain continued, mercilessly hitting the ground of the entire Tokyo area. In the cold air, outside the area that belonged to the fairy tale, groups of people stood in different directions, but they all bowed in the same direction and did not get up for a long time. In the position where everyone was bowing, all the members of Fairy Tale were silent, their gazes converged on Noah's body, not opening their mouths to say a word. Noah, on the other hand, was looking in front of him, looking at a piece of broken feather suspended in a white halo and a crystal ball like crystal that outsiders couldn't see. His heart couldn't calm down for a long time. The world fragments that were lost in different worlds existed in different forms. From the beginning, Noah knew that if he wanted to find the world fragments, it wouldn't be an easy task. Because, some of them only needed to find the location of their existence to appear in front of Noah, some of them existed in an unknown form, some were just scattered in a certain place, some were hidden in a certain object, some needed to be found, and some needed to meet certain conditions to appear. Now, the world fragments that existed in this world, after meeting certain conditions, automatically appeared in front of Noah. Until this moment, Noah finally understood why he couldn't find the world fragments, why there was no news about the world fragments, and why this world didn't even give Noah any hints. It turned out that this world fragment had existed in his side from the beginning. But it needed to meet the conditions to appear. That was, in this world full of despair everywhere, showing hope. Noah's hand involuntarily reached in front of him, holding up the world fragment that no one could see in front of him, whispering a voice that no one could hear. Do you also think that I should protect the little hope left in this world? The world fragment slightly trembled, as if it was whispering something to Noah, making Noah's heart melt. In this 1 year in this world, Noah was used to the darkness, used to the ugliness of human nature, used to despair, and used to the bad nature of human beings. Because of this, Noah also missed his original world very much, but he didn't know when this world started to freeze his heart. Now, the grudge in Noah's heart finally completely dissipated. Because, Noah knew. In this world, beautiful things still existed. Still, there was hope. Rumble. Suddenly, the ground shook as if it was turned upside down. What's going on? At the scene, everyone was shocked, looking up and looking into the distance. Following that, the scene that entered everyone's eyes caused almost everyone to reveal a look of horror. Rumble. On the other side, far away, at a place that seemed to be the other end of the horizon, billowing smoke and dust filled the air, rising high into the sky like burning flames. Roar. Roar. Woo. Amidst the billowing smoke and dust, large and small, grotesquely shaped, and ferocious xenomorphs rushed out like a school of fish. With roars and tremors on the ground, they crossed the national border, crossed the plains, and rushed toward the interior of the Tokyo area. After a day, the army of protogut animals that retreated for a short time finally launched another attack on the Tokyo area. In the center of the protogut animals swarming over like ants, a huge exotic beast walked with heavy footsteps, lifting an extremely long-mouthed crocodile that was more than half its body. It raised its head and let out a roar. Woo 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 woo. The long and drawn-out roar finally woke everyone up from their shock as they reacted. Quick! Rentaro was the first to yell. Quickly organize the battle line. Men! My hall master Zhang Zheng roared. Quickly protect Lord Elysium and leave this place. On a small hill, Elysium was protected by Mugging, who was holding a katana tightly behind him. Together with the residents of the Tokyo area, they were a little panicked. Including Elysium, there were at least 1,000 ordinary people here. If the police were accidentally involved in the battle between the protogut animals and the protogut animals, it would be a real disaster. Just as the police were about to organize the battle line and launch a resistance, while some of them covered the ordinary people led by Elysium and tried to evacuate, a figure suddenly walked out of the crowd, past everyone present, and walked forward. Looking up at the army of protogut animals that swarmed towards him like a school of fish, Noah's footsteps were clear and audible even in this chaotic space. As he walked forward step by step, he spoke word by word, his dark pupils flashing with a soul-stirring spirit. All of you, back off. Everyone was stunned. All of you back off. What does this mean? Ignoring everyone who was stunned on the spot, Noah was like a warrior who overestimated himself and wanted to challenge a scourge. Under everyone's gaze, he stopped and showed everyone his back. I'll believe in this world one more time. As if there was no endless deadly monster army in front of him, Noah's voice slowly sounded. Hope, don't let hope disappear from this world. Don't let me down. Leaving this sentence, Noah's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate space and swept across the protogut animals in front of him. In the next moment, a vast sea of magic surged out from Noah's body like raging waves. Ding! With a light sound, a bright brilliance shot up from the ground where Noah was standing. Like a light pillar, it stood beside Noah. Ding 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 ding. As if triggering a chain reaction, under the influence of the monstrous magic power, dazzling brilliance burst out from the ground around Noah and surrounded Noah's body as if they were protecting Noah. Ding! Immediately after, as if a bell had suddenly rung from the horizon, an extremely gorgeous geometric pattern expanded at the top of the brilliance that surrounded Noah. It emitted a dazzling brilliance as if it wanted to cover the entire sky. Upon a closer look, in the center of the geometric pattern, there was a pattern similar to the coat of arms on the back of Noah's hand. At that moment, it was as if a solemn movement was playing. Together with the dazzling brilliance, it filled the world. Noah, who was in the center of the dazzling brilliance, was like a god descending from the sky, exuding an astonishing majesty. This incomprehensible scene caused everyone present to fall into a daze as if they were in a daze. It was only then that Noah stretched out his hand and placed it in front of him as if he was hugging a sphere. The monstrous magic power poured into Noah's hands like a flood, turning into a dazzling ball of light that illuminated the entire world. No matter what kind of monsters you are, there's no room for you to appear here. Noah slowly raised his head and looked ahead with a sharp glint in his eyes. Disappear. As soon as his voice fell, Noah abruptly closed his hand that was holding the dazzling ball of light. The fairy law. Activate. As Noah closed his hand, the dazzling ball of light exploded and turned into a burst of sacred light. Hum. The sacred light soared as if it wanted to fill the entire world. It spread out like a tide and instantly shrouded the entire space. Holy light surged toward the charging army of primitive gut animals, completely enveloping them within. Woo 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 woo. All of a sudden, with Aldebaran in the lead, all of the protogut animals let out a mournful roar. Their bodies gradually turned white under the illumination of the holy radiance as if they had turned into stone statues. In the next second, they shattered into gravel and disappeared into the world. Looking at the protozoa being destroyed one by one under the suppression of the sacred light, the crowd was unable to recover from their shock for a long time. And this scene seemed to have become eternal, lasting for a long time. Chapter 170. 3 days later, the manufacturing of the monolith began. Now, from any corner of the Tokyo area, looking in the direction of Monolith 32, almost everyone could see the scene of a large number of helicopters and transport planes transporting huge square blocks of metal through specially reinforced hanging nets. The method of manufacturing the monolith was actually quite simple. Similar to the method of building the pyramids, the manufacturing of the monolith was first to build up pieces of metal, then use a large number of transport planes and helicopters to airlift them to the site, use a special adhesive stronger than the metal used to bond planes and spaceships to combine them, and finally pile them up to a height of 1,618 kilometers and a width of 1 kilometer. Now, the manufacturing of the monolith had just begun, and the height of the new monolith was not even 100 meters. In order to prevent the protozoa from taking advantage of the situation, presumably, the manufacturing of the monolith would be the most important matter in the entire Tokyo area. For the time being, people could see a large number of helicopters and transport planes at work. And during the time when the manufacturing of the monolith began, people who had left the Tokyo area with plane tickets began to come back one after another, and people who stayed in the underground bunker also came out. The once chaotic Tokyo area seemed to have returned to the past, and people were still smiling as usual, as if nothing had happened. However, some things, as long as they were not visible on the surface, it did not mean that nothing had changed. At least, during the time when Tokyo was facing a crisis, those who robbed, stole, hurt others, and even killed people for money were all brought to justice. Those who showed an ugly and unbearable side of humanity were also shunned by the people around them. It was estimated that for a period of time, they would have to live like the cursed child, like a rat crossing the street. At the same time, in the news, a report called the Third Great Kanto War was presented to the public in the form of a report. It was the cumulative damage of the Tokyo area caused by the continuous fighting with the Stage V protozoa, Scorpio, at the end of April 2031, and with the Stage 4 protozoa, Aldebaran, in mid-July of the same year. The details are as follows. The combat strength of the Tokyo Ground Self-Defense Force decreased by 83%. The combat strength of the Tokyo Maritime Self-Defense Force was reduced by 45%. The combat strength of the Tokyo Air Self-Defense Force was reduced by 95%. In short, even if the self-defense forces in the Tokyo area were not finished, they would be greatly damaged for a long time and would not be able to recover their former glory. On the contrary, it was another statistic of damage that shocked everyone. The number of police partners officially registered by the Tokyo Police Force decreased by 13%. This part of the damage came from the Third Great Battle of Kanto and the fifth constellation of Bai. That time in Scorpio constellation, other than the 20 to 30 teams that were killed by Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr., the rest did not suffer any injuries. This time, due to the conflict between Fairy Tail and a portion of the residents in the Tokyo area, most of the police gave up on participating in the battle and joined Fairy Tail, which minimized the damage to the police. Therefore, the damage to the police was the least. Of course, if it wasn't for the fact that Captain Nakamura repelled the fifth constellation of Bai at the cost of one of his legs, the entire police auxiliary force would have been wiped out on the battlefield. Therefore, now that the self-defense forces were in a state of great damage, the Tokyo area would probably use the activity of the police as the theme for a long time. Finally, this report ended with the following sentence. It was said that the Tokyo area was the first in the world to avoid the fate of extinction after the monolith collapse disaster in the past 10 years. And the name of the person who saved the entire Tokyo area and made this unprecedented case was deeply engraved in the hearts of the residents of the entire Tokyo area. The president of Fairy Tail, Noah Doria. In the hall, Xia Shi was watching the TV in front of him with a tray in his hand. On the television, with Seiko leading the way, Rintaro, Yenju, Nagasaki, Morning Xia, and the rest of the police officers who had performed outstandingly in the Third Kanto War were giving a celebratory speech and being interviewed by the reporters. Even Mugang and Hina were among them. At this time, Seiko was apologizing to the guests and reporters present. It wasn't because Song Tianzi had done something wrong. Instead, it was because a certain hero who had saved the Tokyo region had skipped the celebration and wasn't present. Song Tianzi was representing this hero to apologize to everyone present. Seiko calmly answered one question after another while being interviewed by the reporters with a faint helpless look. Xia Shi turned his head and cast his gaze on the culprit who was sitting on the sofa reading a document. President, this celebration ceremony was held for you. You skipped it without saying a word. Is it really okay? What does it matter? Noah looked at the document in his hands seriously, but he seemed to be a little indifferent to Xia Shi's words. And it doesn't count as skipping it. I asked Hina to go in my place, right? But people in the Tokyo area want to see the hero who saved them, not a substitute. Xia Shi shook his head. If the president doesn't come, a lot of people will be disappointed. You're wrong. Noah glanced at Xia Shi and curled his lips. If I go, more people will be disappointed. At that time, in front of the entire Tokyo area, Noah made a declaration that he wouldn't participate in the war. At that time, many people didn't think they were wrong. Because these people didn't think that a small fairy tale could save the entire Tokyo area. Unfortunately, now, Noah saved the Tokyo area, which was equivalent to slapping those ugly people in the face and telling them who saved them. So, today, there should be a lot of people who are very unhappy with this celebration ceremony held for Noah. And even if Noah didn't come, these people's faces weren't very good. After all, just a moment ago, led by Seiko, Rintaro, Mugang, and other police representatives from the Tokyo area had collectively criticized the Tokyo area residents for spreading rumors and causing trouble. The Tokyo area residents who went to Fairy Tail to ask for Noah's help had also expressed extreme indignation during the reporter's interview. Even the police chief had righteously reprimanded them for what they had done. After today's celebration ceremony, it is believed that many Tokyo area residents who woke up from their hot-headed state will regret what they did, and those who didn't repent will be more jealous of Noah and the fairy tale. However, their jealousy will soon be completely used by Noah. It didn't take long for Noah, who was looking at the documents in his hand, to show a smile, but the smile was a little cold. Taking out his mobile phone, Noah dialed a number. After waiting for a while in the busy tone of the phone was picked up by the owner on the other end of the phone. Without waiting for the other party to speak, Noah spoke directly. "The time is right. The plan we talked about before can now be carried out." Hearing this sentence, on the other end of the phone, a deliberately suppressed silence lasted for a while. After a while, a slightly happy and charming voice sounded and passed into Noah's ears. "I understand. I will let my people get ready. We owe you a favor, little Noah." Noah put the phone to his ear and held the document in his hand. The smile on his face was unusually cold. Chapter 171. The next day, when the residents of the Tokyo area were still feeling the lingering fear of surviving a disaster, a document was suddenly leaked from various channels. The records in the document also began to spread like wildfire, spreading throughout the Tokyo area in just a day. And when this news was confirmed to be correct, the people of the entire Tokyo area were furious, causing the Tokyo area to once again become chaotic. It was a record of the information related to the number 32 monolith, which caused the attack of the Protozoa army in the past, causing the entire Tokyo area to fall into a crisis of extinction. Nowadays, in order to prevent corruption or binding of public projects, the public bidding system was adopted for public projects. However, in this way, the process would become relatively complicated. The construction of the monolith was a project that needed to be time-sensitive. Therefore, the construction of the monolith project was generally handed over to the construction contractor directly under the command of the Ministry of Transportation and Transport. In other words, in other projects, the embezzlement of the project startup funds may be prevented because of measures to prevent corruption, but in the construction of the monolith project, it was impossible to completely eliminate this possibility. This document that spread like wildfire recorded that a part of the construction funds of the number 32 monolith was misappropriated for no reason, and became the private property of the person in charge of the construction of the number 32 monolith. And at that time, the person in charge of the construction of the number 32 monolith was the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Transportation and Transport of the Tokyo area, Tendo Mujino's elder brother of the same father, Tendo Kazuhiko. Once this piece of evidence was leaked, everyone who received the news immediately understood what was going on. They understood why the Stage 4 Protozoa Aldebaran could attach to the monolith, and the reason why the number 32 monolith collapsed after injecting lithium corrosive liquid into the monolith. All of this was because Tian Tong and light had mixed in other cheap materials during the construction of the monolith, thus embezzling a portion of the construction funds for the construction of monolith number 32. In other words, the reason number 32 monolith was able to be injected with the nightmare corrosive fluid by the Stage 4 Aldebaran was entirely because there was a problem with the monolith itself. Tendo and Hikaru were the fuse that ignited the Third Great Kanto War, the culprits that plunged the entire Tokyo region into crisis. Suddenly, the residents of the Tokyo area were furious and began to parade or demonstrate in groups, making the entire Tokyo area restless. This was especially true for those who had angered Noah in front of the holy residents due to the incident in the Tokyo area. As a result, they were saved by Noah in the end and lost all their face. They were even more shocked and angry. It turned out that the culprits who exposed their true colors and made them lose face, being questioned in person, and being isolated by the people around them, were Tendo and Hikaru. Understanding this, these people were all furious and started to make a ruckus. They took the lead to parade or demonstrate in the streets, turning the grievances of the past few days into indignation, and strongly demanded the Tokyo area to severely punish Tendo and Hikaru. At this time, when everyone in the Tokyo area was angry, another document was released. The Tendo clan was a famous clan that produced many financial and political leaders. This was something that everyone knew. In the process of the Tendo clan's development, the people of the Tendo clan were inevitably tainted with several dirty things. For example, Tendo and Hikaru, there were many people who engaged in corruption. This document was the criminal evidence of the Tendo clan's corruption. Originally, the people mentioned in this criminal evidence were all insignificant people in the Tendo clan. Even if the matter was exposed, the Tendo clan could push them out and completely stay out of it. There wouldn't be any damage. However, when this criminal evidence was released at this time, the situation was completely different. The residents of the Tokyo area, who were in a mess because of various reasons, were furious. Under the influence of various emotions, they were hot-headed and pointed the spearhead at the entire Tendo clan. As a result, all the posts that the Tendo clan members were responsible for were blindly complained and reported by the residents of Tokyo, causing all the Tendo clan members to be thoroughly investigated. With this investigation, all kinds of dirty things were exposed. Many of the Tendo clan's big shots were either betrayed by their partners who had always been in cahoots with them in order to protect themselves, or they had to temporarily leave their posts to avoid the limelight because of the residents of the Tokyo area. As a result, it naturally caused the entire Tokyo area to be in chaos. After all, many posts in the Tokyo area were indispensable for the Tendo clan members. If the Tendo clan were to be punished, the Tokyo area would definitely not be able to survive. It was also because of this that the Holy Son of Heaven couldn't do anything to the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister and could only let him do whatever he wanted. The Tendo clan also relied on this and didn't pay much attention to this incident. They didn't expect that the real disaster had completely fallen on the Tendo clan. Almost at the same time when the Tendo clan's big shots left their posts for various reasons, as if it was arranged in advance, everyone's posts were replaced by others the next day. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner. This time, the Tendo clan members were completely dumbfounded. Whether guilty or innocent, all the posts of the Tendo clan members were replaced by others. Even those who were fine after the incident were destined not to return to their original posts. Even the position of the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister's assistant was revoked because of public opinion. That was to say, everyone in the Tendo clan was forced to be laid off. The Tendo clan was completely finished. The Tendo clan was a first-class mansion located in the first district of the Tokyo area. The huge Western-style building was not so much a mansion, but more like a cottage in the countryside. Due to the invasion of Gastralia, the people of the country were already suffering from the land problem. But the Tendo clan's main gate was more than 100 meters away from the entrance of the mansion. The structure of the mansion was under the care of a gardener. The trees in the courtyard were trimmed very neatly, forming a complete left and right symmetry. The fountain that imitated the shape of a bathing angel was also inlaid with shell-like decorations everywhere. With the stupefied Mugging and Rentaro, Noah walked into the Tendo clan's mansion, pushed open the door of a room, and walked in. This was a pure Japanese-style room. In the center of the room, the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister sat there with his eyes closed. As usual, he was full of majesty. However, they didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but Mugging and Rentaro felt that today, the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister seemed to have a different temperament. It was like the sorrowful aura of a hero past his prime. As if he had been waiting for Noah's group to arrive, the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister slowly opened his eyes and stared at Noah with a sharp gaze. Noah calmly walked in and came in front of the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister. However, he didn't sit down, but stood in front of the Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister, looking down at him and indifferently said, "Your Excellency Tendo, how have you been?" The Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister completely ignored Noah's meaningless greetings. He stared at Noah's face and spoke with an old and hoarse voice. "How did you do it?" "Oh." Noah pretended to be surprised and smiled. "Your Excellency Tendo is only asking me how to get the evidence of the Tendo clan's corruption. There are many ways to get the evidence of those nobodies. We have never spent the effort to clean up their deeds." The Tendo Chrysanthemum coldly said. "If it wasn't for you leaking the evidence of Kazuhito's crimes, even if you released the evidence, it wouldn't have affected us. No, in fact, its influence is that great." Noah mockingly said. "Your Excellency Tendo, haven't you already understood its influence?" The Tendo Chrysanthemum Prime Minister's expression sank. Chapter 172. Even if it was a small thing, it could play an unexpected role when used reasonably in necessary situations. Everyone understood the meaning of this sentence, and everyone had even heard of it before, let alone someone like the celestial child Chrysanthemum Prime who had lived for who knew how many years. But now, Tentong Chrysanthemum truly realized the true meaning of this sentence. Originally, it was just an insignificant piece of evidence to the Tentong family, but it attracted the blind targeting of the angry residents of the Tokyo area, causing the Tentong family to fall into a crisis. When the celestial child Chrysanthemum Prime Minister was in trouble, he already knew who was the one responsible for the two pieces of evidence that suddenly appeared in various channels and were leaked out. Who else could it be except for Noah? Tentong Chrysanthemum did not expect that Noah's means were so brilliant. First, he used the culprit who caused the despair of the entire Tokyo area, the criminal evidence of Tentong and Hikaru, to arouse the grievance and anger in the hearts of the residents of the Tokyo area. Then, he leaked the criminal evidence of the insignificant people of the Tentong family in this situation, causing the hot-headed residents of the Tokyo area to target the entire Tentong family. In the end, the entire Tentong family was forced to step down one by one in the face of the storm. This was not a big deal. After all, as long as the Tentong family pushed out the culprit, Tentong and Hikaru, who caused the anger of the residents of the Tokyo area, the residents of the Tokyo area would calm down. At that time, the people of the Tentong family could still return to their posts. However, as if it was arranged in advance, as soon as the people of the Tentong family temporarily left their posts, all their posts were replaced by others. Even Tentong Chrysanthemum, an assistant official, was dismissed because of public opinion and fell into a situation where he had nothing. It was not until this moment that Tentong Chrysanthemum understood that the Tentong family had completely lost everything they had in the past. Including him, Tentong Chrysanthemum himself. Did you arrange those people? Tentong Chrysanthemum looked at Noah with cold eyes, but his fists were clenched tightly. Where did you find so many people who have the ability to replace my Tentong family? Not everyone would be able to climb up the ranks smoothly. The layoff of the Tiantong family this time provided a good opportunity for someone to be promoted. But if one wanted to stand firmly in this position, how could one do it without a certain ability? Empyrean Chrysanthemum didn't understand where Noah found so many capable people. In response, Noah glanced at Chrysanthemum Tentong and extended his hand to the side. Rentaro handed a document to Noah with a complicated expression. You haven't seen the list of those who replaced your celestial Tong family, right? Noah threw the document in his hand in front of the celestial Tong Chrysanthemum minister. I believe that you should be very familiar with the names of these people. Chrysanthemum silently picked up the document and flipped through it. After a while, his eyes suddenly widened. Sima, that's right. Noah suddenly smiled. These people who have replaced you are your old rivals, the Sima clan's faction. Noah had already set his mind on the Sima clan when he decided to overthrow the Celestial Tong family. The Celestial Tong family and the Sima clan were two very similar existences. The Celestial Tong family occupied a great position in the political world and had extraordinary influence. On the other hand, the Sima family occupied a place in the business world. They relied on weapons to become rich and powerful. One was in politics, the other was in business. Both sides actually coveted each other's achievements in this field, more or less wanted to swallow a bite. Therefore, the Celestial Tong family and the Sima clan had various disputes for various reasons. This was also one of the reasons why Mu Gang and Mu Ji knew each other and were like fire and water. And it just so happened that Noah met the eldest daughter of the Sima clan at a very suitable time, Sima Mu Ji herself. After the bullet incident, Mu Ji found Noah. Noah privately negotiated with Mu Ji, hoping that Mu Ji could become a necessary force when he overthrew the Celestial Tong family. It was also because of this that Mu Ji helped Noah find evidence of the Celestial Tong family's crimes. This time, it was also because of Mu Ji's secret operation that the Celestial Tong Wagwang and the Celestial Tong family's matters were spread to the whole Dongjing area in just one day, causing such a movement. In the end, the people of the Sima clan took this opportunity to replace the Celestial Tong family's position in the political world, which caused the Celestial Tong family to be forced to step down collectively. The operations in the Dongjing area could still be carried out in an orderly manner, reducing the impact of the Celestial Tong family on the Dongjing area to a freezing point. It turned out to be like this. It turned out to be like this. Chrysanthemum's hand holding the list of the people of the Sima clan couldn't help but tremble as he whispered. No wonder even the evidence of Wagwang's crimes can be obtained. There were still many ways to obtain the evidence of the crimes of the insignificant people of the Celestial Tong family, but Celestial Tong Wagwang was the grandson of Chrysanthemum's prime minister, a direct descendant of the Celestial Tong family. The traces of his secret deeds had long been deliberately eliminated by the Celestial Tong family. Except for the Celestial Tong family's own data vault. The Celestial Tong family secretly coveted the Sima clan's position in the business world, and the Sima clan also coveted the Celestial Tong family's position in the political world. Naturally, both sides had special spies mixed into their respective internal departments. In order to get the evidence of Celestial Tong Wagwang's crimes, the Sima clan even mobilized the people who had been lurking in the Celestial Tong family. With the help of mugging, they finally succeeded. Noah said faintly as if he had heard the voice of Chrysanthemum's prime minister. As the former daughter of the Celestial Tong family, no one is more familiar with the situation of the Celestial Tong family than mugging. She even knows the location of the Celestial Tong family's data vault and how to enter it. Chrysanthemum's prime minister immediately shot his emotional gaze to mugging, then suddenly realized something. No, even if you can get the evidence of Wagwang's crimes and trigger a riot in the Tokyo area, it's impossible for the people in the Celestial Tong family to be replaced in such a short time when they leave their post. Speaking until here, Chrysanthemum's prime minister was suddenly stunned. Unless it's a recommendation from someone who has the ability to specially arrange for these people to be promoted instantly without the need for formalities and effort. Noah looked at Chrysanthemum's prime minister with sympathy. That's something that only someone with more influence and authority than you, the Celestial Tong family's patriarch and the Holy Son of Heaven's prime minister, can do. Hearing until here, the list in Chrysanthemum's prime minister's hand fell to the ground. After being stunned for a while, he seemed to have aged a lot all of a sudden. He finally bent his straight back and sighed. So that's how it is. Even the Holy Son of Heaven is involved in the operation of this matter? For that peace-loving princess, Chrysanthemum's prime minister's prime minister without hesitation, and your existence as the cradle of the corrupt Celestial Tong family, is an indispensable force to protect the Tokyo area, but also an invisible threat that can make the Tokyo area cease to exist. Noah turned around, his voice drilled into Chrysanthemum's ears. I believe that the Celestial Tong family, who has lost their status, will soon send specialized investigators to conduct a thorough investigation here. With mugging here, the Celestial Tong family's data vault won't be able to stop anyone. All the dirty things that the Celestial Tong family has done will be exposed to everyone's eyes. The Celestial Tong family is completely finished. Leaving this sentence, Noah lifted his feet and walked out of the door without looking back. Ryotaro looked at the aged Chrysanthemum's prime minister with a complicated expression, then finally sighed, followed behind Noah, and left the scene. Only mugging raised his slightly gloomy face, looked at Chrysanthemum's prime minister, then slowly raised his hand holding the long sword, and put it on the long sword. Chrysanthemum's prime minister also raised his head, his cloudy eyes met Mugging's face. Are you going to kill me? Your crime is enough to be sentenced to death. Mugging said in a low voice. Noah has already negotiated with the Holy Son of Heaven. I will be the one to execute your death sentence. Is that so? Chrysanthemum's prime minister said sarcastically. I didn't expect that in the end, you, a vengeful ghost who crawled back from hell, would actually succeed in your revenge. That's why I am very grateful to the person who helped me achieve my goal. Mugging slowly pulled out his sword, his eyes flashed with deadly hatred and murderous intent. It's over. Chrysanthemum's prime minister. After saying that, the cold light of the sword flashed in the dark room. Poochie. Red blood flew into the air, dyeing the entire ground red. Chapter 173. Xiashi and Hina, who had prepared refreshments in the kitchen, carried 2 trays of tea to the main hall. Rentaro-san. Xiashi walked up to Rentaro and raised the tray in his hand. Please have some tea. Thank you. A slightly insincere smile appeared on Rentaro's face. He reached out and took the tea from Xiashi's tray. Hina walked up to Mugging and glanced at her worriedly. Then, she raised the tray of tea in front of Mugging. Miss Mugging, please have some tea too. Emicham. Mugging nodded gently. She held the tea in her hand but didn't seem to want to drink at all. Her head was lowered, and an extremely weak expression appeared on her delicate face. Noah, who was sitting in front of Mugging and Ryutaru, silently observed them for a while. Then, he raised his teacup and looked at the swirling tea in it. He suddenly said, "Let's start." Are you still thinking about the Tentong family? As soon as he said this, Mugging and Rentaro's expressions changed. One was at a loss, while the other was at a loss. Noah, who was quite familiar with Mugging and Rentaro, easily guessed the reason for their reaction. Rentaro was probably feeling uncomfortable because the Tentong family that adopted him was destroyed just like that. His adoptive father was also sentenced to death right in front of him. After all, when Mugging's parents were killed by the Tentong family, Rentaro also left the Tentong family with Mugging. However, he didn't hate the Tentong family like Mugging did. It was impossible to say that Rentaro didn't have the slightest attachment to the Tentong family. That was why Rentaro's emotions were so tangled. He probably wouldn't be able to get over it for a while. As for Mugging, it was simple. After killing the celestial Tong's chrysanthemum, Mugung left without a word. No one knew where he went. When Mugung reappeared and came to Noah's house, Mugung was already in a daze. Noah, Xiashi, Hina, and Rentaro, who had returned with Noah, all discovered that not only was Mugging reeking of blood, but there was also blood seeping out of his scabbard. Shortly after that, TV news reports reported the death of Tentong family's Tentong Hyuga, Tentong Genji, Tentong Shimin, as well as the culprits who caused the entire Tokyo area to fall into a major crisis, Tentong and Hikari. Thinking about it, it was clear that these people were killed by Mugging himself, right? And these people, if nothing unexpected happened, were the masterminds behind the deaths of Mugging's parents. It seemed that Mugging had somehow found out about the murderers of his parents. After killing the celestial Tong's chrysanthemum, he rushed to various places without stopping to kill his enemies. Now, all of his enemies had been killed by his own hands, and the Tiantong family was finished. Mugung, who had buried all of the Tiantong family as the meaning of his life, knew what would be left after taking his revenge. Emptiness. Other than that, there was nothing else. Regarding this, Xiashi, who was extremely smart compared to ordinary children, seemed to understand. Although Hina was not as smart as Xiashi, her life as an assassin made her extremely sensitive in this regard. Therefore, the two left obediently after serving tea. In this regard, Noah pondered in his heart for a while, then took a deep breath and made a decision. Mugging, Rentaro. At that moment, Noah thought about what to say in his heart and said, "Can you listen to a somewhat willful request of mine?" Hearing this, Mugging and Rentaro were stunned at the same time. After looking at each other blankly, they sorted out their inner emotions and pulled themselves together a little. "What is it that requires you to speak in such a solemn manner?" Rentaro asked with some confusion. "You've helped us a lot. If there's anything you need my help with and I can do it, I'll definitely help you." "Go ahead." Mugging nodded concisely. "You've helped me take revenge. No matter what it is, I'll agree to it." "Don't be so sure." Noah shook his head and his expression became extremely serious. "After all, I want you to disband the Tentong Civilian Guard Company and join Fairy Tail." "Join Fairy Tail?" Mugging and Rentaro were both stunned. In front of the two, Noah first closed his eyes for a moment before suddenly opening them. A shocking light flashed across his eyes. "Mugging, Rentaro, I want to change this world." "Change the world?" Mugang and Ryutaru were completely stunned. Change the world? What did that mean? Intuition told Mugang and Rintaro that what Noah wanted to say next was definitely something very big, something so big that it could really change the world. As a result, Mugino and Rintaro reined in their emotions and became serious. Actually, I've had this idea for a long time, but I've never thought of implementing it before because it's not something that can be done in a short period of time. Noah placed the tea in his hand on the table in front of him and met the gazes of Mugang and Rintaro. He sighed. I believe you all know that I've always wanted to change the current situation of the cursed child, so that these children can truly live a happy life like ordinary children. However, this matter has cruelly told me that there are still many people who hate these children, and there are also countless people who reject these children. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Due to the fact that the Tokyo area is ruled by the Son of Heaven, who doesn't reject the cursed child, the children here have the best experience in the whole country and even the whole world. But even so, the situation in Tokyo is still like this. I really can't imagine what kind of life the children in other places are living without the protection of the fairy tale, and are not residents of the Tokyo area. Mugang and Rintaro were silent, they only nodded and agreed with Noah's idea. So, when you say, change the world, you mean you want to change the situation of the cursed child being discriminated against all over the world? Mugang's expression became stern. You should know that this is not something that can be done easily, right? On the side, Rintaro nodded again, but this time, Rintaro agreed with Mugang's idea. Basically, as long as it was a person who experienced the Protozoa War 10 years ago and survived until now, and kept that hellish memory, they all hated the cursed child. Because the cursed child's body had the blood of the monsters who took away their family and friends in the past 10 years. It wasn't impossible for these people to accept the existence of the cursed child, but it was unrealistic for the whole world to abandon hatred and discrimination and accept these children. Not to mention other factors, even if the two factors of hatred and discrimination were excluded, the most primitive human fear was a difficult problem to solve. The cursed child's body had the protozoa virus in it. Once the protozoa virus's invasion rate of the body exceeded 50%, these innocent and cute children would turn into real monsters. No one wanted to have a person who could turn into a man-eating monster at any time by their side. Even if it was a child. Therefore, the possibility of turning into a monster at any time meant that these children would not be able to integrate into the world of ordinary people. Unless Noah could come up with a solution to the possibility of these children turning into protozoa. Otherwise, this idea could only be said to be nonsense. Of course, Noah understood this problem, and showed a hesitant expression, but after a while, he slightly relaxed, looked at Mugang and Rintaro, and said a shocking fact. Actually, in the fairy tale, there is already a way to completely suppress the protozoa virus in the cursed child's body, and to stop the invasion rate from increasing. What did you say? Even Mugang and Rintaro couldn't help but lose their voice when they suddenly heard this news. Noah glanced at the two of them who were shocked. He stood up and said to the two of them, "You two, come with me." Chapter 174. Tap. 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 In the cold corridor, the sound of footsteps lingered in the air. It was only after a long time that it stopped and was replaced by new footsteps. Under Noah's lead, Mugino and Rentaro's expressions were tense. They followed Noah forward while quietly observing their surroundings. This was the underground area under the main building of Fairy Tale. Here, the surrounding walls are all made of metal that doesn't seem to be cheap. Some wires and instruments are faintly installed inside the walls. At first glance, it looks like the interior of a spaceship. It's full of sci-fi vibes. Mugang and Rintaro really didn't expect that there would be such a place under Fairy Tale. Since entering this place, they haven't seen a fourth person. Judging from this situation, they believe that even the people in Fairy Tale didn't know about the existence of such a place. In fact, this was indeed the case. In the entire Fairy Tale, except for Noah, only a few people knew about the existence of this place. Noah led Mugang and Rintaro through a long corridor. After an unknown amount of time, they arrived at the end of the corridor. Mugging and Rintaro immediately raised their heads and looked at the end of the corridor. Then, the two saw a very sci-fi moving door. Next to the moving door, there was a sophisticated scanner sitting there. Noah came in front of the scanner and put his hand on the scanner under the watchful eyes of Mugging and Rintaro. Thump. The scanner immediately made a sound as if a light was turned on. A ray of light swept across Noah's hand. Then, between the two dim lights at the top, one red and one green, the green light lit up. Only then did Mugging and Rintaro realize that it was actually a scanner to confirm palm prints and fingerprints. The scanner confirmed the palm prints and fingerprints of the visitor. After confirming that there were no errors, the scanning interface automatically opened with a click sound. A small platform with a numeric keypad rose and replaced the original position of the scanning interface. Noah was very familiar with the numeric keypad. He quickly pressed at least 5 keys per second. After continuously pressing more than 30 numbers, the green light that had just dimmed lit up again. Gotcha! With the mechanical sound of the door opening, the moving door finally slid to the side, revealing everything inside to Mugging and Rintaro. Originally, Mugging and Rintaro thought that the inside of the door would be a very impressive place. Unfortunately, when the door slid open, what appeared in front of Mugging and Rintaro was just a space about the size of an ordinary room. The floor, walls, and ceiling were all made of metal. It looked very cold. Rather than a room, it was more like a prison. In the room, other than the wires all over the floor, there was only a device that looked like a culture tank. In the device, a culture tank the size of a beaker was indeed connected to it. Inside it was an unknown red liquid. It looked like it was boiling, with bubbles rising from it. Mugging and Rintaro could see it clearly. Looking at the culture tank in front of them, Mugging and Rintaro couldn't help but look at it. After a while, they looked at each other and looked at Noah. Noah. The impatient Rintaro hesitated for a moment before calling out, Noah. You said that the method to suppress the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body without increasing the rate of infection is this thing? Noah shrugged and brought Mugging and Rintaro into the room. When he arrived in front of the culture tank, he looked at the liquid inside and said softly. The liquid inside is the blood that once flowed in my body. Blood? Mugging and Rintaro widened their eyes at the same time. Noah ignored their shocked expressions and nodded. Then, he looked at Rintaro. Rintaro, you are a product of the new human creation plan. Your right hand is a prosthetic arm made from supermecha. Not only does it have powerful attack power, but it can also increase the power of the hidden ammo. That's an incredible power. Is that so? Rintaro smiled bitterly. But didn't you easily block my attack and defeat me? That's right. Noah shrugged. Then, have you never doubted why an ordinary human like me can fight head-on with you who has the power of a mechanical soldier? It's not that I never doubted it, but I've always doubted it, Rintaro said in a deep voice. Your strength is too abnormal. It would be one thing if you had extraordinary martial arts skills like Mugen-san, but you once fought me head-on in terms of strength. That's not something a normal human body can have. You're right. This time, it was Noah's turn to smile bitterly. That's why I'm starting to doubt if I'm even human. After saying this, Noah shook his head and explained. Actually, my body is very special. Not only am I immune to the invasion of the protozoa virus, but I can also absorb the protozoa virus to strengthen the human body and increase my strength. Mugen-san and Rintaro were shocked. Really? Mugen-san stepped forward and asked quickly. Why? I also want to know the answer, but I only know that my body is special. I don't understand why. Noah sighed. So, don't ask me. All you need to know is that the protozoa virus has no effect on my body. Instead, it will strengthen my strength. After saying this, Noah seemed to be unwilling to talk about this and corrected the topic. After realizing that the protozoa virus has no effect on my body and knowing that the protozoa virus in the cursed child's body is corrosive, I began to use my body as a sample and let some of the senior researchers in Fairy Tale draw blood from my body for research. After research, we found that my blood is basically no different from the blood of a normal person. However, if we encounter the protozoa virus, the protozoa virus will be broken down by my blood. Noah revealed this secret that he had never revealed to outsiders before. After realizing that my blood can break down the protozoa virus, the researchers in Fairy Tale and I began to imagine that if my blood was injected into the cursed child's body, would it be able to break down the protozoa virus in the cursed child's body and turn the children back into normal people? Hearing this, Mugen-san and Rintaro's heartbeat began to accelerate. If Noah's idea was feasible, then the cursed child might really be able to turn back into a normal person and live a normal life. Unfortunately, soon, Mugen-san and Rintaro saw Noah's regretful expression. Unfortunately, after leaving my body, the activity of my blood seems to have decreased a lot. It may not be a problem to break down a small amount of the protozoa virus, but it won't work if you want to break down the protozoa virus in the cursed child's body. Noah looked at Mugen-san and Rintaro. However, although I can't break down the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body, if the cursed child is injected with my blood, the invasion rate of the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body will be greatly reduced. Together with the preparation, the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body will no longer cause any invasion to the children's bodies. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah turned around and faced the culture tank. And what you see now is the serum developed using my blood as a sample. Mugen-san and Rintaro were immersed in the information that Noah revealed. They did not hide the shock in their hearts and showed it on their faces. Completely breaking down the protozoa virus. This was the result that people all over the world had been researching for 10 years, but they had never been able to find anything. Now, this result was displayed in front of them. How could Mugen-san and Rintaro not be shocked? In short, Noah wants Fairy Tale to become the world's cursed child's shelter. If this is really the case, Noah's change the world can definitely be achieved. In this world where protogut animals wreaked havoc, humans relied on weapons to barely obtain the ability to protect themselves from the protogut animals. However, it was limited. Sooner or later, the chi in this world will be depleted. When that time comes, what will humans do? They can only rely on the cursed child's power that surpasses that of humans to fight against the protogut animals. But if all the cursed children in the world were to join the Fairy Tale, then what would the Fairy Tale become? It's very simple. When that time comes, Fairy Tale will become the only organization in the world with an initiator. If the police all over the world wanted a suitable partner, they would also join Fairy Tale one after another, making Fairy Tale an unprecedented huge police organization that could influence the whole world. If the humans who had lost all of their cursed children still wanted to deal with the primitive animals, they could only bow down to the Fairy Tale. The status of the cursed children in Fairy Tale will soar to the sky. Not only will they be able to get rid of the status of a street rat, but they can even ride on the heads of the humans in this world. Because humans can only rely on them. Such a whimsical plan to control the needs of the humans in the world by owning all the cursed children, if it was proposed by another person, it would definitely have a tragic end. However, Fairy Tale is different. As long as there was a serum that could completely suppress the protozoan virus in a cursed child's body, which cursed child wouldn't want to join the Fairy Tale? The serum sample here is the mother. You can use the value-added device to obtain the serum for the cursed children. As long as the mother of the serum sample is not lost, even if someone else obtains the value-added serum, there is no way to replicate it. Noah suddenly smiled. After all, there is only one serum that can be developed using my blood, and there is only one mother that can be used to increase the value of the serum. Mugino and Rintaro were completely speechless. It was not that they were making a fuss, but the plan that Noah proposed was too big, to the point that they could not help but be afraid. Once the rulers of those countries realize that something is wrong with the large-scale adoption of the cursed child, it won't be something that can be resolved with just a few words. Rintaro's voice was a little hoarse. It was obvious that he was too shocked. Then it's very likely that fairy tale will become the public enemy of the entire world. Is that okay? However, the person who refuted Rintaro was none other than Mugino himself. Riki-kun. Mugino bitterly smiled and shook his head. Who would want to be the enemy of an organization that has gathered a large number of cursed children? Rintaro was suddenly speechless. If Noah's plan was to be carried out, then, if they could only rely on the cursed children to deal with primitive animals, how could the humans possibly overestimate themselves and deal with the fairy tale that had a large number of cursed children? It was not that they did not want to deal with it, but that they could not. It was such a simple and crude logic. Only when humans realize the preciousness of the cursed children will they understand who is the weak side. Noah's somewhat cruel words echoed. In this chaotic world, only those with power have the right to speak, and humans are weak. I will use facts to tell them that they have no right to look down on humans. Do you want to become my sword again? Noah first looked at Mugino and smiled. However, this time, you will not live for revenge, but for me, for those children. This will be the meaning of your life. My meaning of life. Mugino's delicate body trembled violently, and a pair of eyes that had originally dimmed due to the end of her revenge suddenly lit up. What about you? At this time, Noah looked at Rintaro again, as if he had seen through the weakness in his heart, and looked directly into Rintaro's eyes. Do you want to lead the children who changed their fate and the fairy tale who ruled over the world to defeat all the proto-god animals and save the world? Rintaro's eyes flashed with a flash of light. Let the cursed children rise again? Defeat all the proto-god animals? These two words hit Rintaro's weak spot, as he believed in upholding the meaning of justice. Seeing that Mugino and Rintaro's expressions had brightened, Noah's lips slowly curled up. He knew that this matter was settled. Chapter 176. The Tentong Civilian Guard Company was disbanded. Early in the morning of the next day, Mugging personally disbanded the Tentong Civil Guard Company and returned all the rent for the company's office. Together with Rintaro, they moved into Fairy Tale. On this day, Kino and Rintaro officially announced that they would join Fairy Tale and become a member of Fairy Tale. Next, Kino will be the acting president of Fairy Tale. Together with Xiaoshi, who is the president's advisor, and Hina, who is the president's assistant, Kino will take care of the entire Fairy Tale. In a way, she will become the leader of Fairy Tale. As for Rintaro, he will take Yenju and select a group of like-minded people from Fairy Tale to form a travel group and travel around the world. Of course, this is just a cover-up on the surface. Rentaro's real job was to travel all over the world to investigate the situation of the cursed children, and secretly recruit all of them into the Fairy Tale and bring them back to the Fairy Tale. Currently, Rintaro was the only one in this special travel group. However, as Fairy Tale grows stronger, there will be more and more travel groups like this. Sooner or later, all of the cursed children in the world will be brought back to Fairy Tale, completely changing the fate of these children, and completely changing the situation of the world. In order to make Fairy Tale grow to the point where it can accommodate all of the cursed children and a large number of people in the world, Noah and Kino also secretly carried out an operation. Although it's called an operation, in fact, it's just Noah personally going to an unexplored area, choosing a suitable terrain, and killing all of the protozoa there to empty the land. Mugging, on the other hand, began to arrange for people to purchase a large amount of pyrolite and prepare to make a monolith. He would secretly transport it to the place chosen by Noah, where he would build a paradise comparable to the Tokyo area, but only belonging to the Fairy Tale. With the efforts of Noah, Mugino, Rintaro, Natsuya, Hina, Yenju, and the others, it was believed that it wouldn't be long before this new area named Fairy Tale was discovered and listed on the map, and people would be shocked to discover it. Fairy Tale had already grown to a point where they could no longer resist. When that time came, the Fairy Tale would rule over the entire world, and the cursed child would be completely overthrown. Humans would only be able to rely on the Fairy Tale to survive. Of course, at present, this operation is just the beginning, and there is still a lot of work to be done to reach a mature stage. These work, Noah is very assured to let Kino, Rintaro, Xiaoshi, Hina, Yanju, and the others handle it, while he quietly hid behind the scenes and began to withdraw from management. Kino, Rintaro, Xiaoshi, Hina, Yanju, and the others who already understand Noah's reason for doing this, although they are a little depressed, but yesterday, Noah specifically talked to them about this matter. So, even if they are a little sad, Kino and the others still understand Noah's reason, and put all of their attention into their work, and do their best for their own ideals. Tokyo 1, Shingju. In the spacious room, Shingju is playing the piano. Originally, Xing Tianzi used the piano in his room as a piece of furniture to decorate the room, rather than to play a musical instrument. But, ever since he learned the piano from Noah, Shingju would play the piano whenever he is free. Over time, the piano has already become Shingju's daily pastime. But today, Shingju has been absent-minded while playing the piano, and from time to time he makes mistakes, as if his soul has left his body. Every time Shingju plays the piano, a figure will appear in his mind. When that person is strong and domineering. When that person is gentle and considerate. He recalled the time when that person was furious. When that person shoots with a gun. And so on. And this phenomenon, since the first time that person who has been appearing in Shingju's mind met Shingju, he has been rude to Shingju. As the ruler of the Tokyo area, Shingju not only has the necessary political skills, but also the appearance, heart, character, and conduct are impeccable. Who would have the guts and heart to speak sarcastically to such a perfect young lady who had the looks, temperament, status, and wealth? Who would have the guts and heart to speak sarcastically to her? And not only did that person do it, but he also completely disregarded Shingju's face, leaving and coming as he pleased, and has always been very strong. Since the first time that person treated Shingju like this, Shingju has begun to care about him. Not for other reasons, but because no one has ever treated Shingju like this. Later, that person also showed all kinds of performance in front of Shingju. Strong side. Domineering side. Gentle side. Considerate side. Even for his family and companions, he was angry and became the enemy of the entire Tokyo area. The Elysian Emperor saw all of this. Unconsciously, this little care began to grow, and Shingju couldn't help but start to pay attention to him. When that person stood up for him, argued with Qi Wuzhongshuan, and forced Qi Wuzhongshuan to retreat, Shingju would feel a trace of joy. When that person did not hesitate to ignore his persuasion and refused his invitation, Shingju would feel lost and sad. When that person, for his family and companions, made a declaration of hostility in front of the entire Tokyo area, Shingju would feel particularly anxious. When that person skipped the celebration and left him to deal with the aftermath, Shingju would feel helpless and angry. Especially when that person, in order to teach him piano, got close to him and blew hot air in his ear, Shingju's heartbeat would speed up a lot and his heart would be very nervous. In this way, Shingju became more and more concerned about that person. And when that person, in front of all the police and the public, faced the entire army of primitive intestine animals alone, and used an unknown method to instantly kill all the primitive intestine animals, Shingju's figure bathed in sacred light deeply penetrated into Shingju's heart. What was that method, Shingju didn't know, and neither did others. When Shingju asked the other party said that it was just a weapon that was accidentally obtained like bullets, which was a half-believed, half-perfunctory answer, leaving behind a mysterious side. It was this mystery that had caused the Elysian prince to be so uneasy. Until now, Shingju realized that he really didn't know that man at all. This also made Shingju have strong emotions, and he couldn't help but want to get in touch with him. Unfortunately, after the defeat of the Tentong family, the other party never contacted the Holy Son of Heaven again. This was also the reason why Shingju was uneasy. Of course, the reason why Shingju was uneasy was not only because there was no news of the other party, but also because of a sudden and inexplicable impulse. An impulse to see the other party. Shingju didn't know why, but he had this feeling. If he couldn't see the other party now, perhaps, it would be difficult to see him again in the future. Driven by this feeling, Shingju became more and more uneasy, and he sighed. He glanced at the sky outside and thought about what he should do next. When he realized that he still had some free time, he began to hesitate. In fact, as long as he made a phone call, Xingjiu could hear the other party's voice. However, only today, Xingjiu didn't have the thought of calling the other party. Instead, the urge to see the other party was particularly strong. After a while, Xingjiu finally made a decision, stood up, and walked out of the room. Chapter 177. Holding a dazzling night sword that was as sharp as ice, Noah used a piece of cloth to wipe the sword bit by bit. On the side, the body of the modified large-caliber revolver had been wiped extremely clean. Magazines filled with manufactured bullets were scattered around it. The pitch-black body of the revolver flashed with gorgeous arcs of light from time to time. It was very eye-catching. A sword and a gun. One white and one black. Such two special weapons, one was brought out from the world of fairy tale, and the other was a product of this world. Not to mention their performance and usefulness, they also had a special meaning. Therefore, Noah wanted to carry them with him. Carry them and leave this world. The world fragment, scattered in this world, has been found. The faintly discernible special palpitations of being able to leave this world at any time once again appeared in Noah's heart. Noah, who had already experienced it once, knew that as long as he grasped the throbbing feeling in his heart, then with the help of this world, he would be able to leave this world and return to the between worlds. However, before that, Noah must ensure that fairy tale is absolutely safe and that nothing will happen to it. Only then can he leave this world with peace of mind. This was also the reason why Noah exposed the serum sample of the protozoan virus at this time and proposed the plan to make fairy tale a shelter for the world's cursed children. Similarly, this was also the reason why Noah let Mugging and Rentaro join fairy tale and handed over fairy tale to Mugging, Xiaoshi, Hina, and others to manage fairy tale. Don't think that Mugging didn't have management skills just because she ran Tentong's civilian guard company. As the daughter of the former Tentong family, Mugging's management skills were definitely not worse than Noah's. She even surpassed him in some aspects. Otherwise, Moj wouldn't have put Mugging in her eyes and treated her as a sworn enemy. In addition, with the help of the smart Xiaoshi and the capable Hina, fairy tale, in their hands, they can definitely fully utilize Noah's plan and the abundant resources prepared to realize the plan. Perhaps, when Noah has the opportunity to return to this world again, fairy tale would have become an existence that the world can't ignore, and those poor children would have completely turned over. Cha, in the subtle friction sound, Noah slowly put the knight's sword in his hand back into the scabbard, then put the scabbard with the sword into the side bag, put it aside, and picked up a magazine on the table in front of him. It was an XD series automatic pistol magazine. Taking a closer look, the bullets loaded in the XD series automatic pistols magazine were all made of crystal. If it was the world of fairy tale, the sorcerers would definitely be able to recognize these crystals. Magic crystals. Those were magic crystals used to store magic. However, it was a one-time use item. These magic crystals were forced into Noah's luggage by Lee Sana when he left fairy tale. Originally, there were some very convenient magic stored inside, such as magic that allowed one to breathe in water, magic that allowed one to automatically find their way, magic that allowed one to emit light and heat, and even magic that allowed one to isolate themselves from the heat of magma and move about freely like swimming. Now, all the magic inside had been cleared out by Noah and stored in his shatter magic, and made into 12 bullets. Due to the fact that the magic crystals themselves did not contain much magic, the power of the shatter magic, stored in the magic crystal bullets, was much weaker than that of Noah's own magic. However, it was still enough to deal with a Stage V protozoan. After all, no matter how strong a Stage V protozoan was, or how hard its skin was, as long as it was hit by the shatter magic, there was only one outcome: to be crushed. Therefore, unless the opponent had a terrifying level of regeneration that allowed them to recover even if their bones were crushed, these magic crystal bullets were no match for them. Carrying the magazine, Noah put his gun and magazine into the holster, then put it on his waist. After covering them with his jacket, he picked up the side bag and walked to the door. Just as he opened the door and walked out of his house, a group of figures standing side by side in front of him entered Noah's eyes. Noah. Chairman. Brother. Seeing Noah walk out of his house, the group of people standing side by side could not help but call out to him. The group was led by Mugging, Xiaoshi, Hina, Yanzhu, Rentaro, and the others. Chairman. Yanzhu said with a face full of reluctance. Are you really leaving? Noah's gaze swept across the faces of Yanzhu, Xiaoshi, Hina, Mugging, Rentaro, and the others. After discovering that there was more or less a hint of reluctance in their eyes, he smiled bitterly, stepped forward, and reached out his hand to pat Yanzhu and Hina's little heads. Didn't I already tell you yesterday? You still can't accept it today? But. As expected, Yanzhu and Tina were still unable to let go of their emotions. Even Xiaoshi was staring intently at Noah with an uncontrollable sense of despondency in his eyes. There was nothing Noah could do about this. All he could do was comfort the three children while looking at Mugging and Rentaro. At least tell us where you're going, Mugging said with a grumbling expression, as if she had been wanting to say this for a long time. In that case, we'll be able to contact you at any time. I have my reasons as well. Please forgive me. Noah sighed. Then, he took out the magazine containing the magic crystal bullets and tossed it to Rentaro. There are only 12 bullets, but if there's one, Scorpio will have to die again. Rentaro, who reflexively caught the magazine, nearly threw it out of his hands. Mugging, who was standing beside him, exclaimed in shock. Could this be the bullet you're going to use to kill Scorpio? That's why you'd better use it well. Noah said teasingly. Then, he walked to Mugging, took one of her hands, and rolled up the sleeve on her hand. Before Mugging could react, Noah reached out and placed his palm on Mugging's arm. Then, he closed his eyes, and the magic power in his body surged. A burst of dazzling light suddenly surged from Noah's palm that was pressed on Mugging's arm, shocking everyone present and causing them to close their eyes subconsciously. After a while, the strong light faded, and everyone opened their eyes. Then, they were all stunned. This was because a golden pattern had appeared on Mugging's arm. What's this? Mugging couldn't react in time. However, Noah casually said, It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, but you should be able to feel that there is a switch in your heart. If you press that switch, it will work. Although it can only be used 3 times, if there is a third Kanto war, the person who will save Tokyo will not be me, but you. Hearing this, everyone immediately looked at the golden pattern on Mugging's arm in shock. Could it be that this was the weapon that Noah had accidentally obtained, like the bullet that had wiped out an army of more than 2,000 protozoa? All right. Noah took a step back and smiled in a relaxed manner. With these 2 items, I believe that no matter what happens, you will be able to protect the fairy tale and prevent it from getting hurt. After saying this, Noah casually walked past everyone and walked outside. Noah. President. Brother. Mugging, Rentaro, Yanzhu, Xiaoshi, and Hina couldn't help but call out. The next moment, a similarly carefree voice entered everyone's ears. There will be a time when we meet again. The group suddenly stopped and looked at Noah's figure as he walked away. After a long time, a long time. Chapter 178. The pitch-black giant wall was like a black mountain peak deep in the clouds. It had a deeper color than the darkness, giving people an invisible pressure. However, the transport planes and helicopters that came and went still used strengthened nets to hang pieces of metal cubes. They flew up into the clouds and continued to work on this pitch-black giant wall. Number 32 Monolith. After a few days, this new number 32 monolith was built as high as a mountain peak. It had the same invisible majesty as the other monolith. Noah, who came from District 39, specially made a trip here. He looked up at the majestic monolith, surrounded by a large number of transport planes and helicopters, and fell into his memories. In this world, Noah stayed for a relatively heavy year compared to the time in the fairy tale world. Looking back at the beginning, Noah realized that he had exhausted all his efforts to establish Fairy Tale, which was now famous throughout the entire Tokyo area and destined to rule the entire world in the future. The original intention of establishing Fairy Tale was just to let a group of ostracized children live a better life. That is to say, the reason why the fairy tale was born today was because of Noah's sympathy and pity for the cursed child. Noah, who couldn't bear to see a group of innocent children being treated like that, decided to establish the fairy tale, a shelter for the cursed children. Later on, because of this, he was baptized by the plundered generation, similar to the celestial child's chrysanthemum, and understood the ugliness of this world. Since then, it could not be said that Noah was unhappy, but he was a little suffocated by the dark side that spread in this world. As a result, in order to resist, he learned social skills, political skills, and how to treat his enemies cruelly. He even learned how to kill. This was something he didn't learn in the fairy tale. Now, Noah, who learned these things, said that he had matured and his heart had undergone a transformation, but was this transformation really good? If it was just to live in the fairy tale world, these things shouldn't be necessary, right? Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but miss the noisy magic guide guild. Now, Noah understood why people who left their hometown missed their homes so much. Because, only after leaving their hometown, outside, would they know how wonderful the life they had lived there was. Noah was the same. After coming to this world, he knew how precious the unrestrained life in another world was. However, Noah didn't regret leaving the fairy tale and coming to this world. As for the reason, it was very similar to the original intention of establishing the fairy tale in this world. It was just because Noah wanted to help those worlds that were like children. Until now, Noah realized that the original intention of establishing the fairy tale, after leaving the other world and establishing the fairy tale in this world were both so simple that Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Screech. Suddenly, the sound of emergency brakes drilled into Noah's ears, waking up Noah, who was immersed in his memories. At that moment, Noah turned his head and looked at the source of the sound with a puzzled expression. Immediately afterward, he saw a black luxury car stopping there abruptly. The car door was also opened forcefully. A young girl got out of the car and ran over as if she wanted to crash into him. Noah's face showed a startled expression as expected. She was wearing a white wedding dress, and her silver shoulder-length hair seemed to be shining. Her peerlessly beautiful face was filled with an anxious expression that was rarely seen before. She quickly ran in Noah's direction. Other than the Holy Son of Heaven, who else could it be? Ah! Just when Noah had just seen the full appearance of the person, the white high heels on the Holy Son of Heaven's feet that were not suitable for running at all turned under the other party's running. She lost her balance, exclaimed, and fell forward. Noah finally reacted. He quickly jumped forward and hugged the falling Holy Son of Heaven, so that the dignified head of state would not fall down disgracefully. What are you doing? Noah just wanted to scold her, but the next moment, when he saw the expression on the face of the Holy Son of Heaven who raised her head, all the words he wanted to say were forgotten completely, and he was speechless. He saw that the Holy Son of Heaven seemed to be enduring something. She pursed her lips and unconsciously held Noah's hand tightly with her slender hands wearing smooth white lace gloves. A pair of beautiful eyes were full of anxiety. President Noah, is it true that you are going to leave the Yodo area? Hearing this, Noah was startled and asked in surprise. How do you know? I just went to Fairy Tale. The president of Tiantong told me about this and told me the direction you left in. The Holy Son of Heaven couldn't help but hold Noah's hand tightly, and she also looked at Noah's eyes tightly. She didn't seem to realize that she was infinitely close to Noah, nor did she realize that she was doing something very intimate. Her expression became sad. That is to say, President Noah, it is true that you are going to leave the Yodo area, right? Looking at the sad look on the Holy Son of Heaven's face, Noah panicked for a while. What's going on? Why did she show such an expression? Could it be that this princess is also reluctant to let me leave? Impossible, right? My relationship with her doesn't seem to be that good. Is it because of the residents of the Yodo area who reject fairy tale, so you want to leave the Yodo area? The Holy Son of Heaven's seemingly pale lips were tighter and tighter. Indeed, what those people did was a bit too much, but that was also because of the persecution of animals. I believe that one day, they will also wake up to what they have done and let go of the hatred in their hearts. So, President Noah, please don't blame those residents. Hearing this sentence, even Noah couldn't help but admire the Holy Son of Heaven. Before the beginning of the Third Kanto War, it wasn't only a fairy tale that was hurt by the brainless residents in the Yodo area, but this princess was also the same. At that time, some people said that Seiji was incompetent, some said that Seiji was muddle-headed, some said that Seiji was not able to protect the Tokyo area and deserved to die. There were even some people who attacked her and said all kinds of dirty words. Noah also heard that some residents who coveted the beauty of the princess even felt that the Yodo area couldn't be saved, and that they were going to die. With crazy feelings, they touched the Holy Son of Heaven and tried to violate the Holy Son of Heaven. As a result, none of those ordinary people succeeded, and they were all arrested. Under such circumstances, the Holy Son of Heaven not only did not have any negative feelings towards these residents, but also spoke for them. Obviously, she didn't take these things to heart. She is really kind. So, Noah's attitude also softened, and he didn't avoid the Holy Son of Heaven's gaze and shook his head. I didn't leave the Yodo area because of this. Then, the Holy Son of Heaven was at a loss. Then why did you leave the Yodo area? Is it strange that I left the Yodo area? Noah sighed. I'm not from the Yodo area. You should have noticed it, right? The Holy Son of Heaven was suddenly speechless, and after a while, she whispered. In other words, you want to go back to where you came from, right? Go back to where I came from? Noah pondered for a while and smiled bitterly. Not necessarily. Maybe, I will go to a new place, that's not for sure. Looking at the slightly bitter expression on Noah's face, the Holy Son of Heaven opened her mouth, but in the end, she could only squeeze out such a sentence. Then, will you come back? You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.